One day, I got a call saying my husband had been in an accident. The shocking part wasn't just the accident, it was that he had been with his mistress, and she hadn't survived. My husband, on the other hand, was now paralyzed from the waist down. After the accident, he began demanding that I take care of him for the rest of his life. I couldn't believe it. Was I really supposed to spend my life looking after a man who had been unfaithful to me? My name is Mandy, I'm 32 years old, and I live with my husband Ray and our almost 5-year-old daughter, Lily. I'd taken a break from work when I was pregnant with Lily, but I returned to my job once she started daycare. Between work and raising a child, I stay busy, but my life feels full, mostly thanks to Ray. Ray has always been a hardworking husband and father. He takes good care of Lily and supports us well. Our daily routine was simple but special. We'd have dinner together, and Ray would listen to Lily tell stories from her day once he got home from work. "Daddy, look, I drew a picture at daycare today," Lily would say. "Oh, did you? You're so good at drawing. Lily, maybe you can draw a picture of me next time." "Okay," and Mary told me her family went to the amusement park. "Can we go too?" "Sure, how about we all go next weekend?" "Really? Yay, I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Lily, though I love your mom first," Ray would say with a wink. Lily would pretend to pout, and we'd all laugh. These everyday moments with my family were my greatest joy. But then Ray began to change. He started coming home late and leaving early on his days off. At first, I thought he was just busy with work, but it happened so often that I got worried. So, I decided to ask him about it. "Ray, you've been coming home late a lot. Is everything okay at work?" I asked. "Oh, yeah," he replied. "I've just been busy with some new projects." "I see," I said, "but you've also been leaving early on your days off, and you never tell me where you're going." Well, I've been visiting my parents," he said. "I thought I should check on them from time to time." Ray's parents aren't very young, but we usually see them every few months, and they're doing fine, so this didn't quite add up. So why all these sudden visits to his parents? I was suspicious, but didn't want to push him too hard, so I let it go. 2 weeks later, Ray texted me again, saying he'd be late because he had overtime. This time, he didn't get home until after midnight. When he arrived, he seemed cheerful, but I immediately noticed something odd. "Ray, where have you been?" I asked. "I told you, I had to work late," he replied. "But what about that smell? It's a woman's perfume. Why would you smell like that if you were at work?" I said. Ray's eyes darted around nervously. He seemed flustered and then quickly responded, Actually, we had a client event today." "A client event?" I asked, doubtful. He nodded quickly, adding, "One of the VIP clients is a woman. We were drinking together, and her perfume must have rubbed off on me." "Then why did you lie about working overtime?" I questioned. "You could have just told me about the event." Ray clasped his hands and said, "I felt guilty. You're working hard at home with Lily and everything. I didn't want you to worry." I couldn't press him further, so I let it go and went to bed. But after that, every time he came home late, I could smell the same perfume on him. Each time I asked, he'd say it was just another client event. This only made me more suspicious. One day, feeling like something was really wrong, I left Lily with my parents and met up with my younger sister to talk about it. As soon as we sat down at a cafe, I told her everything. "Ray has been coming home late a lot lately, and he always smells like a woman's perfume," I said. My sister looked serious and replied, "Yeah, he's definitely cheating." Hearing it from someone else made me believe it even more, so Ray was really cheating on me. Plus, she added, it's weird to have client events with the same person so often, and he'd have to be pretty close for her perfume to stick to him. "I know it's hard with Lily and everything," my sister said, "but I think you really need to have a serious talk with Ray." Just then, her tone changed. "Hey, look over there," she said, sounding disturbed. "What's going on?" I asked. "Speak of the devil, isn't that your husband?" she said, pointing. I followed her gaze and saw Ray. Beside him was a young woman, younger than me, holding his arm tightly. The sight was so painful I was speechless. Ignoring my shock, my sister began taking photos of them with her phone. "What are you doing?" I asked, still stunned. "Don't just stand there," she replied. "We need to gather evidence. Start recording a video." Shaking, I opened the camera on my phone. Ray and the woman got into his car, still holding on to each other and kissing multiple times. I recorded everything. When they finally drove off, I stopped filming. Here I was, Ray's wife, now holding proof of his betrayal. I suddenly realized we were still in the cafe, and tears began streaming down my face. My sister stayed quiet for a moment before squeezing my hand and speaking firmly. I know this is incredibly painful, she said, but you need to talk to him, for Lily's sake too. Can we just let this man, who lies so easily and cheats, be her father? Her words snapped me back to reality. That's right, I'm the only one who can protect Lily. Ray might be her father, but he's lost the right to be a real dad. I needed to confront him about what he'd done, sooner rather than later. After talking it over with my sister, we decided that Lily would stay at our parents' house for the day. I went home to wait for Ray, but he didn't come back, no matter how long I waited. Then, around 10 p.m., our rarely used landline phone rang. Who could be calling at this hour? When I picked up, a man's voice said, "Is this Mrs. Johnson's residence?" "Yes, it is. Who am I speaking with?" I replied. "This is the police. Is this Mr. Ray Johnson's residence?" "Yes, it is. Did my husband do something wrong?" I asked, nervous. "Please stay calm," the officer said. "Your husband has been in an accident." "What?" I gasped. The police explained that Ray had been in a car accident. A woman in the passenger seat, his mistress, hadn't survived. Ray, meanwhile, had been taken to a nearby hospital. Without thinking, I rushed straight to the hospital. When I arrived, Ray was in surgery. A police officer explained the situation. "From what we've learned, it seems your husband and the woman had been in a close relationship." "Yes, I suspected it. I was actually going to confront him about his affair today," I replied. The officer added hesitantly, "It's difficult to say, but because of the accident, there's a chance your husband may be left with a permanent disability." I felt overwhelmed. In further conversations with the police, I found out that Ray's mistress had also been married. Her husband, who'd also come to the hospital, looked devastated, especially since Ray had survived and she hadn't. A few days later, Ray regained consciousness. I went to the hospital with my parents, my sister, and Lily. I left Lily with my sister while my parents and I entered Ray's room. When we arrived, his parents were already there. Ray had been left paralyzed on one side of his body due to the accident. Ray looked at us and said, "I'm sorry. I know I've caused you all a lot of worry." Before I could say anything, his parents rushed to his side. "What are you apologizing for?" his dad said. "We're just glad you're alive. Surviving is a blessing." "Yes, Ray," his mom added. "You've always been a good man, that's why you survived." "Thank you, Dad, Mom," Ray said quietly. "I'm grateful I made it." My husband and in-laws were acting like his affair didn't exist. As they celebrated his survival, my worry turned into anger, and I finally spoke up. "Sorry to interrupt your celebration, but Ray, will you divorce me?" "What? Divorce? What are you talking about?" he asked, shocked. "Ray, you got into an accident with your mistress," I replied. "Here are the divorce papers. Just sign them." No, you've got it all wrong," he stammered. The woman in the car was just a business associate, not a mistress. He was lying, and it was obvious. I decided to tell him everything I knew. "Are you really going to pretend you didn't cheat, Ray? I saw you with her. I watched you two get into the car together," I said firmly. "And no, it wasn't like that," he tried to argue. "Don't make excuses," I snapped, forgetting we were in a hospital room. "You even spent less time with Lily, just to run around with her. What were you thinking?" At this, my mother-in-law frowned and interrupted, "Mandy, what are you so angry about? If Ray cheated, it's probably because you did something wrong." "What are you saying?" I asked, shocked. "Ray just woke up and is dealing with a lot. The doctors told you he's paralyzed on one side," she continued. "He needs your full care now. Instead of talking about divorce, you should start learning how to be his caregiver." Ray added, "She's right. As my wife, you'll be taking care of me from now on." At that moment, any sympathy I had for him disappeared completely. At first, I'd felt sorry for him despite everything he'd done, but now I couldn't care less. They felt no remorse for what they'd put me through, only for themselves. Holding back my anger, I looked at my mother-in-law and said, "Are you serious? Who on earth would want to take care of a cheating fool like him, idiot? Mandy, how dare you insult my Ray, my mother-in-law exclaimed. Well, it's the truth, isn't it? I replied. He cheated, and he caused an accident. Isn't everything that's happened his fault? But even if he was at fault in the accident, cheating happens because of the other person, she insisted. So you're saying that if I did something wrong, he was allowed to cheat? I was balancing work, taking care of Lily, and handling everything at home for our family. And you still blame me while defending your son? My firm tone made her go quiet. Ray, unable to take it, yelled, "How dare you talk to my mom like that?" He glared at me, as if being injured made him somehow superior. I walked up to him, looking down at him intensely. He muttered, "What the," in a nervous voice. "Who do you think is responsible for all this?" I demanded. "Well, this mess is because you betrayed our family by cheating," I said sharply. "You even got into an accident with your mistress. Do you realize how foolish that is? The only reason this is all messy is because you suddenly want a divorce," he shot back, still refusing to take responsibility. Feeling disgusted, I finally lashed out, "Grow up, Ray. How long are you going to keep blaming everyone else? You're the one who cheated, and on top of that, your mistress died in the accident. Stop justifying yourself, Mandy." He stammered. "You've destroyed our family with your selfish affair. I don't know how much pain you've caused Lily. You've not only hurt me, but you've broken our daughter's heart. There's no way I could stay married to someone like you. Just live with your consequences." As I turned away, Ray looked shocked and speechless, his face pale. Then, the door opened, and Lily walked in. "Lily? How did?" "Sorry, sis," said my sister, following behind. I took my eyes off her for a second. Seeing Lily, Ray immediately tried to get her on his side. "Lily," he said, "you wouldn't want Daddy and Mommy to be apart, right?" Lily looked thoughtful, then said, "If Mommy's here, I'm fine." Ray looked stunned. "What? Why?" "Because Mommy looks sad when she's with Daddy." "And that's because Daddy does things that Mommy hates, right?" she asked. "Well, I don't like it when Daddy makes Mommy sad," Lily said. "I don't need a daddy who does that. I'm fine with just Mommy." Ray was taken aback, completely stunned by Lily's words. With nothing more to say, Ray lay back on the bed, shoulders slumped. When I handed him the divorce papers again, he finally gave up and signed them. After that, I hired a lawyer to pursue alimony and child support, backed by the evidence of his affair. Ray also had to pay damages to the husband of his late mistress, which added to the large sum he owed. Since his mistress had been a junior employee at his company, his infidelity was exposed, and he ended up getting fired. Losing both his job and his reputation, and being responsible for another person's death, was a heavy consequence, but it felt like justice. The combined financial hits drained Ray's savings, and he ended up selling our house and moving into a small apartment with his parents. Now, his in-laws care for their wheelchair-bound son every day. As for me, I decided to stay with my parents for a while, with Lily, to give us time to recover. Once things have settled, I plan to live on my own with Lily again, but for now, being surrounded by family feels better for her well-being. One day, on our way to daycare, I asked her something that had been on my mind. "Hey, Lily, are you really okay?" I asked gently. "Okay with what?" she replied, looking up at me. "With it just being us. Without Daddy around." Lily gave me a bright smile and said, "I love Mommy the most. I don't like anyone who makes Mommy sad." Hearing this, I smiled back. "I see. Mommy loves you too, Lily." Lily wrapped her arms around me with all her little might, and as I hugged her back, I promised myself I would protect her and be there for her always.
The hotel ballroom was aglow with chandeliers and the murmur of happy guests. I sipped my champagne, watching Sarah glide across the room in her beautiful wedding gown. Everything seemed perfect, until it wasn't. "You conniving witch! You ruined everything Dad worked for, and now you dare show your face here?" Sarah's voice cut through the air, sharp and unforgiving. Heads turned. There was a collective intake of breath. I froze, the glass slipping from my fingers and shattering on the floor. "Sarah, what are you talking about? This is your wedding day, I managed to say, struggling to keep my voice steady. She marched up to me, eyes blazing. Don't play dumb, Paige. You manipulated the family finances to erase Dad's legacy. How could you do that to us? I looked around at the staring guests, whispers spreading like wildfire. My heart pounded as I tried to think clearly. I don't know what you've been told, but this isn't the time or place. This is the perfect time and place, she snapped, her voice trembling with emotion. My father deserves justice, and I won't let you get away with this. I started, but she cut me off. Save it. Everyone should know the truth about you. Sarah's shouting had drawn a crowd, faces filled with a mix of curiosity and horror. James, my son, pushed through the throng, coming to stand beside me. Sarah, this isn't the way to handle things. Let's talk about it privately. Privately? No way. This is where everyone will hear it, Sarah retorted. You always back her up, don't you, James? Because you're being unreasonable, James shot back, frustration etched in his features. I placed a calming hand on his arm. James, it's okay. We'll figure this out, Sarah scoffed. Typical. Always the peacekeeper. Well, Mom, this time you can't sweep it under the rug. A murmur of agreement rippled through the guests. People were hanging on every word. I faced Sarah, feeling a mixture of sadness and resolve. If there are issues to discuss, we will, but not here. You deserve your wedding day to be perfect, not marred by accusations. She snarled. Perfect? This day is already ruined thanks to you. You took everything from us. Before I could respond, her new husband Tom swept in, trying to pull her away. Sarah, let's go. This isn't the moment. She shook him off. No, Tom. Everyone needs to know what she's done. Tom looked at me, then back at Sarah. We can handle this later. Please, don't ruin our day. For a moment, Sarah softened, her grip on her anger loosening just enough to let Tom lead her away. The guests resumed their hushed conversations, casting furtive glances in my direction. James sighed deeply. Mom, what's going on? I shook my head, trying to process. I don't know, James, but we'll get to the bottom of it. The sense of normalcy seemed fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. I knew this was far from over. As Sarah disappeared into the crowd with Tom, a storm of questions swirled in my mind. What had turned her against me so fiercely? What secrets lay buried beneath her accusations? I was determined to find out, and to clear my name. The peace and unity I had worked so hard to maintain in our blended family were unraveling, one thread at a time. The commotion of the wedding day still echoed in my mind as I sat on the porch, memories of the past flooding back. I closed my eyes and found myself back in the whirlwind days when Bruce and I first met. It was late fall, the leaves blanketing the streets with a golden glow. I had walked into the quaint coffee shop on Main Street, seeking warmth from the crisp, biting air. That's where I first saw him. Bruce Miller, the charismatic entrepreneur who seemed to light up the room just by being in it. Excuse me, is this seat taken? He had asked, flashing a grin that melted away any reservations I had. No, please, go ahead, I replied, my heart fluttering in my chest. Our conversation that day flowed effortlessly, as though we had known each other forever. By the time our coffee cups were empty, I knew Bruce was special. Our dates were a whirlwind of dinners, spontaneous road trips, and long, heartfelt conversations about life, dreams, and family. One evening, a few months after we started dating, Bruce took my hand as we walked along the riverbank. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Paige, Bruce said, turning to face me, his eyes serious but full of warmth. I know it's complicated, but I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me? My breath caught. Yes, Bruce, I'll marry you, I whispered, barely able to contain my joy. From that moment on, life seemed almost magical. Our wedding was a small, intimate affair. Bruce's daughter Sarah was there, a distant but polite teenager, trying her best to accept the new addition to her life. Blending our families was no easy feat. Sarah was reserved, often retreating to her room rather than joining us for family dinners. Bruce would try to bridge the gap, often sharing stories to make us laugh. Give her time, Paige, Bruce would say gently. She'll come around. I nodded, hopeful. But every so often I'd catch Sarah's stare, a cold glimmer of resentment that she masked well around Bruce. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Bruce looked at me, his expression thoughtful. You've been amazing, trying to bring the family together. I just want us to be a family, Bruce, I replied, squeezing his hand. Sarah's subtle hostility was something Bruce didn't see, perhaps because he didn't want to. He was Daddy's little girl, even if she was growing up, and he wanted so badly for us all to be happy. In the months following our marriage, Bruce's business began to thrive. The long hours and dedication he put into his company paid off, but it also meant he was away more. I did my best to hold the family together, supporting Sarah's school events and cheering James on at his soccer games. But every step closer I tried to get with Sarah seemed to push her further away. Our interactions were often laced with unspoken tension. Whenever I made efforts to bond, she would nod curtly and disappear into her room. "Mom, why doesn't Sarah like you?" James asked one evening, after a particularly cold one-word response from Sarah. "She's adjusting, honey," I said, hoping my words would become the truth. I stood by the window, gazing out at the twilight sky. The family I had dreamt of was filled with cracks beneath the surface. I didn't see the storm brewing underneath Sarah's calm facade, nor the lengths she would be willing to go to vent her silent anger. How blind love and determination had made me. Dinner time had become a tense affair in our household. Bruce had always insisted on family dinners, sitting us down together every evening. It was meant to be a time to connect, but more often than not, it felt like navigating a minefield. "Sarah, how was your day?" Bruce asked one evening, his voice filled with genuine interest and warmth. "Fine," she replied curtly, pushing her food around on her plate. She barely looked up, her face a mask of indifference. James tried to break the silence. "We're working on a cool project in science class. We're building a rocket model." "That sounds exciting, James," Bruce said with a smile. "Right, Sarah? You think so too?" Sarah muttered, disinterested. Bruce gave me a worried glance. I responded with a small, encouraging smile, though inwardly I was exhausted by the constant effort to maintain peace. Later that night, I found Sarah in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge. "Let's talk." "Sarah," I said, trying to sound calm and inviting. She sighed, shutting the fridge door with more force than necessary. "What is it, Paige?" "I know things have been rough between us, but I'd like us to find a way to get along. For Bruce's sake, if nothing else." She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "For Bruce's sake? How noble of you." "Sarah, please. This hostility isn't helping anyone. Can we try?" "You don't get it, do you?" she snapped, her voice rising. "You're so focused on playing the perfect wife and mother, but you're not my mom. You never will be." "I'm not trying to replace your mom," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I just want us to be a family." She scoffed, turning away. "Family? This isn't a family. It's your fairy tale. And I'm just a prop in it. Sarah?" "Save it, Paige. I don't need your fake concern. Just stay out of my life," she said, storming out of the kitchen and leaving me standing there, feeling more divided than ever. The days turned into weeks, and if anything, Sarah grew colder. Any attempt to reach out was met with disdain or outright hostility. Bruce, caught up in expanding his business, noticed but attributed it to typical teenage angst. Only James seemed to sense the depth of Sarah's resentment. At a family game night, James tried to lighten the mood. "How about Monopoly? We haven't played that in a while." Bruce agreed eagerly. "Great idea, James. Sarah, care to join us?" Sarah shot me a glare before plastering on a fake smile. "Sure, why not?" As we played, the tension was palpable. Every move seemed to irritate Sarah more, until finally she exploded over a petty loss. "This is so dumb," she yelled, shoving the game pieces aside. "Why do we even bother?" "Sarah, calm down," Bruce said, surprised by her outburst. "No, I'm done pretending," she snapped, turning on her heel and leaving the room. Bruce sighed heavily. "What am I missing, Paige?" "All we can do is keep trying," I said, though the words felt hollow even to me. Quiet moments alone with Bruce were rare, but cherished. One night, we sat on the porch, the cool night air offering a brief respite from the day's troubles. "It'll get better," Bruce said, more to himself than to me. "Sarah just needs time." "I really hope so," I replied, leaning into him. But deep down, I sensed that something more sinister was brewing inside Sarah, something that time alone wouldn't heal. As I watched the stars flicker above, I hoped against hope that this storm would pass. But Sarah's brooding silence and cold stares told me otherwise. She was a ticking time bomb, and I feared the day she would explode. The phone call came late one evening. Bruce had been working long hours, often coming home exhausted. But that night, he hadn't come home at all. "Paige," the voice on the other end was solemn. "It's Bruce, he's had a stroke." Everything after that was a blur. The rush to the hospital, the sterile smell of antiseptic, the sympathetic looks from the doctors and nurses. Bruce didn't survive the night. At the funeral, Sarah stood apart from us, her face an unreadable mask. James leaned on me, his grief palpable. We gathered around Bruce's grave, tears spilling freely. The reality of his absence felt unbearable. During the service, Bruce's old business partners approached me, their faces grave. "We're so sorry for your loss, Paige. Bruce was a good man." I nodded through my tears. "He was." "We need to discuss some things about the company when you're ready," one of them added gently. "There are complications." "Of course," I managed to say, though I wasn't ready for anything but mourning. After the funeral, the house felt impossibly empty. Sarah was distant, her cold demeanor even more pronounced. She barely spoke during meals, her presence a stark reminder of the fractured family Bruce had left behind. One evening, as I was sitting in Bruce's office trying to make sense of the business documents, Sarah walked in. "Do you even care, Paige?" I looked up, startled. "Of course I care, Sarah. I loved your father deeply." "This isn't about Dad," she snapped. "It's about you taking over everything, his business, his legacy. You're just replacing him like it's nothing." "That's not true," I protested. "I'm trying to keep his work alive, for all of us." "For you," she charged. "This is all about you and your control." "Sarah, that's not fair," James said, stepping into the room. "Stay out of this, James," she retorted. "Stop it, please," as I said, holding back tears. "We need to stick together now more than ever." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Stick together? You mean fall in line under you, right?" "Sarah, why are you doing this?" James asked, his voice shaking. "Dad wouldn't want us to fight like this." "Dad isn't here to want anything," she said coldly, "and neither of you understand what's at stake." She stormed out, leaving a silence heavy with unresolved anger. Days turned into weeks, and I met with Bruce's business partners, trying to understand the complexities of his company. One day, one of the partners, Mr. Riley, pulled me aside. "Paige, there's something you need to know," he said, his voice low. "We've found discrepancies, large sums of money unaccounted for. It looks like someone's been embezzling." My heart sank. "Who?" "That's the thing," he said, looking grim. "It appears to be someone close. We need to investigate further, but brace yourself. It might be someone you wouldn't expect." A shadow of doubt crossed my mind. "You mean Sarah?" He hesitated. "It's too early to say, but we need to be thorough." As I absorbed the news, I felt a new resolve. I had to protect Bruce's legacy, our family, from falling apart. But the thought that Sarah, even indirectly, could be involved was like a knife to the heart. The undercurrent of betrayal and suspicion grew stronger, and I knew confronting this would be the toughest battle yet. The storm Sarah stirred had only begun, and as the truth loomed closer, I feared what it might reveal. "Mom," James said, sensing my unease, "we'll get through this. Together." I nodded, drawing strength from his words. "Yes, we will. We owe it to Bruce and to us." I sat in Bruce's old office, surrounded by stacks of papers and unopened letters, feeling overwhelmed. The discrepancies Mr. Riley mentioned weighed heavily on my mind. Something was terribly wrong, and I needed answers. The door creaked open, and Sarah walked in with a defiant glare. "Still playing the grieving widow, I see," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my composure. "There are financial issues with the company. Serious ones." Her eyes narrowed. "And you're blaming me, of course. How convenient." "I'm not blaming anyone yet," I replied. "But your father's legacy is at stake. We need to work together." "Work together? That's rich," she scoffed. "You just want control." I held up a document. "This isn't about control. Large sums are missing. Do you know anything about this?" She crossed her arms. "Why would I know anything? I have my own life, Paige. Unlike you, I'm not obsessed with running everything." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I'm trying to protect what Bruce built, and I need to understand what's happened." "Maybe you should look in the mirror," she fired back. "For all I know, you're the one who messed things up." James entered the room then, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" "Your mother is accusing me of stealing," Sarah snapped. "I'm not accusing you," I said, exasperated. "I'm asking if you know anything." "Cool it, Sarah," James said, stepping between us. "Let's just calm down and figure this out." Sarah threw up her hands. Why are you always on her side, James? Wake up. She's twisting everything. Sarah, that's enough, James said firmly. Dad's gone and we need to stick together to get through this. There was a long, heavy silence before Sarah turned and stormed out. James turned to me, his face etched with worry. Mom, what's really going on? I handed him the documents. Money is missing from the company. A lot of it. We need to find out who's responsible. James frowned as he scanned the papers. Do you think it's Sarah? I don't know, I admitted, but we need to figure this out before things get worse. Days turned into sleepless nights as I pored over financial records, trying to make sense of the chaos. The more I looked, the more suspicious gaps I found. One name popped up repeatedly. Tom, Sarah's fiancé. The transactions tied back to him were too frequent and too large to be coincidences. One evening I decided to confront Tom directly. I invited him over, making sure James was there for support. When Tom arrived, he had an air of confidence that soon wavered under scrutiny. Tom, we need to talk, I said, ushering him into the living room. His eyes darted nervously. What's this about, Paige? He asked, trying to appear casual. It's about the company's finances, I said plainly. Your name appears in some questionable transactions. Tom's face hardened. You're accusing me? I'm asking for an explanation, I countered. His eyes flickered to James, seeking an ally. James, you know I wouldn't do anything to harm the family. Just answer the question, Tom, James said, his voice cold. Tom's composure cracked. Fine. Yes, I moved some money around, but it's not what you think. I was trying to help. Help, I echoed in disbelief. By draining the company? Paige, you don't understand. Bruce was under a lot of pressure. He knew business needed an infusion, and I was handling it, Tom explained, but his words rang hollow. The police will need to hear your side too, I said, my voice steady. Tom's face turned pale. You're turning me in? I have to protect our family and Bruce's legacy, I said. Tom looked at James, desperation in his eyes. James, you have to believe me. I was set up. This isn't what it looks like. But James stepped away, disappointment clear in his expression. You broke our trust, Tom. There's no coming back from that. As Tom was let out, I felt an odd solace. The truth was starting to come to light, but there was still a long road ahead. Sarah's part in all this remained a painful mystery, one I had to unravel for the sake of everything Bruce and I had built together. After Tom's arrest, the atmosphere in our home was tense, every interaction fraught with unspoken accusations and raw emotions. I hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Tom's actions and uncover the full extent of his betrayal. The investigator, a sharp-eyed man named Mark, was thorough and relentless. One evening, Mark arrived with a stack of files, his face grave. Paige, you might want to sit down for this. I motioned for him to continue, fear and anticipation gnawing at me. We've discovered that Tom was siphoning funds directly from the company accounts for the past 2 years, Mark began. It wasn't just embezzlement. He was involved in fraudulent deals that put significant financial strain on Bruce. James, who had been listening quietly, interjected. So Tom is the reason Dad was so stressed out? Mark nodded. Yes, those financial irregularities likely contributed to Bruce's deteriorating health. A wave of grief and anger crashed over me. And Sarah? Was she involved? Mark hesitated. We haven't found direct evidence implicating Sarah yet, but her proximity to Tom raises suspicions. We need to be careful. Suddenly the front door burst open, and Sarah stormed in, face flushed with anger. What's he doing here? She demanded, glaring at Mark. We're discussing the investigation, I said firmly. Sarah's eyes blazed. So, you mean your witch hunt against Tom? He's innocent, and you're ruining his life. Sarah, we have evidence, James started, but she cut him off. Evidence, she spat. This is all a setup. Paige is framing Tom to get rid of him. I stood up, feeling a surge of frustration. Sarah, why would I do that? Bruce's company is collapsing because of Tom. He betrayed us all. Her face twisted with rage. Of course you'd say that. You've controlled everything from the start. You couldn't stand seeing us happy. Happy? James echoed, incredulous. Sarah, Tom was stealing from us and driving our father to his grave. How was that happiness? Sarah turned to me, tears in her eyes. You never wanted us to be a family. You only cared about your perfect image. Well, now everyone sees the truth about you. At that moment, Mark cleared his throat, breaking the tense silence. I think it's best if I go now. We've got a lot more work to do. As Mark left, Sarah's shoulders slumped, and she looked more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. "He's all I have left," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I reached out to her, but she flinched. "Sarah, you have us. We can get through this, but we need to face the reality." She backed away, shaking her head. "I can't. You've destroyed everything." With that, she fled upstairs, leaving her words hanging in the air. James and I exchanged a sorrowful look. The storm wasn't over. It was only just beginning. In the following days, Mark's investigation unearthed more damning details. Tham had not only drained the company's resources, but also used the money to fund a lavish lifestyle and risky ventures. His actions had placed the entire business on the brink of collapse. One evening, as I was reviewing the latest findings, James sat beside me. "Mom, we need to talk to Sarah. She's spiraling." "I know," I said, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. "But how do we get through to her?" "We'll find a way," he said, determination in his eyes. "We're not giving up on her." The next morning, I went to Sarah's room, knocking softly. "Sarah, can we talk?" "Go away," she mumbled from inside. "Please, Sarah, it's important," I persisted. After a long pause, she opened the door, her eyes red from crying. "What do you want?" "I want us to move forward," I said gently. "We've all made mistakes, but we need each other now." She looked at me, a flicker of hope mingling with her anger and sorrow. "How?" "By understanding the truth," I said, stepping inside, "and by forgiving each other." For the first time, Sarah didn't pull away. She sat down, and we began to talk. It was the start of a long journey toward healing, but at least it was a beginning. Together, we would confront the past and find a way to rebuild our shattered family. Tom's arrest sent ripples through our community, and I half expected Sarah to come to her senses. But instead, her fury intensified, and she became more withdrawn. One evening, she cornered me in the kitchen, eyes blazing with desperation and anger. "You did this! You've always been out to get Tom," she yelled, fists clenched at her sides. "Sarah, Tom is a thief. He betrayed our family. Why can't you see that?" I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're lying," she screamed. "This is all your fault. You wanted to destroy us from the start." I stepped forward, trying to reach her. "Sarah, listen to yourself. The evidence is clear. Why are you defending him?" "Because I love him." She burst into tears, collapsing onto a chair. "I love him, and you've taken him away from me." James walked in, eyes wide with concern. "Sarah, you need to understand, Tom did this to himself. He's hurt all of us." She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. "You're no better, James. Always siding with her, both of you against me." "That's not true, Sarah," James said softly. "We're trying to protect this family. We're trying to protect you." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. It was heartbreaking to see her so broken, so completely consumed by her emotions. I didn't know how to reach her, how to make her understand that we were in this together. Over the next few days, Sarah's behavior became more erratic. She would leave the house for hours, returning late at night, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. One evening she confronted me again, this time with an even more determined look. "I spoke to Tom," she said, her voice trembling. "He says he's innocent, that you set him up." My heart sank. "Sarah, you can't be serious. Tom is lying to you." "No, you're lying," she shouted. "I'm going to fight for him. I'll prove he's innocent." "Sarah, please," I begged. "Don't do this to yourself. Don't do this to us." She turned on her heel, leaving me standing in the kitchen, a deep sense of dread settling in my stomach. A few days later, Sarah returned home with a lawyer demanding we drop the charges against Tom. The lawyer, Mr. Johnson, looked uncomfortable as he laid out their case. "Paige, Sarah believes Tom is innocent, and we're here to prove it," he said. I was stunned. "Prove it? How?" "She believes there is evidence that wasn't considered, that the investigation was biased," Mr. Johnson explained. "Biased?" James interjected. "Tom's guilt is clear, Mr. Johnson. He admitted to the crimes." "But under duress," Sarah insisted. "He was forced into a confession." "That's ridiculous," I said. "Tom had every opportunity to come clean. He chose to lie and steal." Mr. Johnson cleared his throat. "We'll be requesting a review of the case. Until then, I'd advise you to reconsider your stance." As they left, I felt the ground beneath me shift. Sarah was determined to fight for Tom, no matter the cost. Her refusal to see the truth was tearing us apart. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. James sat beside me, his presence a calming balm. "We'll get through this, Mom," he said softly. "We have to." "I know," I whispered, "but I'm worried about Sarah. She's so lost." "We'll find a way to bring her back," James reassured me. "We just need to be patient." The days passed and the tension grew. Sarah's desperation drove her actions, pushing her further away from us. It was a painful reminder of how fragile our family had become. The truth was out there, but Sarah wasn't ready to accept it. As I stood at the window watching the sunset, I knew this battle was far from over. We had to hold on, to fight for the truth, no matter how hard it got. For Bruce, for our family, and for Sarah, we couldn't give up. The storm was still raging, but we had to weather it together. The courtroom was silent except for the murmur of hushed voices as the judge banged his gavel. Tom stood in the dock, his face a mix of defiance and desperation. Sarah sat behind him, her expression a blend of hope and fear. The prosecution had presented a solid case, and now it was the defense's turn. Mr. Johnson walked to the front looking determined. "Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Reed is innocent. He was manipulated into a confession. The true culprit is Paige Miller." Gasps echoed through the room. I tightened my grip on James's hand, feeling the eyes of the courtroom on me. Mr. Johnson laid out his argument, weaving a tale of deceit and manipulation that painted me as the villain. When it was finally my turn to testify, I stood up, my heart pounding. The prosecutor, Mr. Evans, guided me through the questions. "Mrs. Miller, did you have any involvement in the embezzlement?" he asked. "No, I did not," I replied firmly. "Explain how you discovered the financial discrepancies," he continued. "I noticed irregularities in the accounts after Bruce's death." "I hired a private investigator who uncovered Tom's involvement," I said, glancing at Sarah, who was glaring at me. Mr. Evans nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. No further questions." Mr. Johnson approached, a smirk on his face. "Mrs. Miller, isn't it true that you wanted control of the company after Bruce's death?" "I wanted to protect his legacy," I replied. "Or to control it?" he pressed. "Objection, Your Honor," Mr. Evans interjected. "Asked and answered." "Continue, but tread carefully, Mr. Johnson," the judge said. Johnson nodded. "You claim to protect Bruce's legacy, but isn't it true you made decisions that weakened the company's finances?" "I did no such thing," I said, trying to keep calm. "But you had access to the accounts. Isn't it possible that you mismanaged funds to frame Tom?" He pushed, trying to unsettle me. "No, it's not," I said firmly. "Tom's actions are his own. He chose to steal and betray us." Mr. Johnson sneered. "Convenient for you to say." "Objection," Mr. Evans said loudly, badgering the witness. "Sustained," the judge said, and Mr. Johnson stepped back. When the final statements were made, the jury left to deliberate. Hours felt like days as we waited for their decision. Finally, they returned, and the foreman stood up. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Tom Reed, guilty on all counts." The room erupted. Sarah screamed, "No, this is a mistake." She rushed towards Tom as he was led away in handcuffs, her cries heart-wrenching. In the days that followed, Sarah's devastation was palpable. Tom had turned against her in a plea deal, revealing his true nature. She was alone, broken, and confused. I approached her one night as she sat on the porch staring into the distance. "Sarah," I began softly. She didn't turn. "What do you want?" "To help you," I said, sitting beside her. "We're still a family." Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. "Nothing's the same anymore." "No, it's not," I agreed, "but we can rebuild, together." She looked at me, her eyes filled with pain. "How?" "One step at a time," I said gently. "You're not alone, Sarah. You have us." She nodded slowly, the anger and resentment starting to thaw. It was a beginning, a fragile one, but a beginning nonetheless. In the weeks that followed, our focus shifted to rebuilding what Tom had tried to destroy. James worked tirelessly with me, restoring the company's stability. Sarah, though still struggling, began to find her footing, seeking solace in small acts of redemption. One evening, as we stood on the porch looking out at the sunset, James spoke. "Mom, we will rebuild everything he tried to destroy." I smiled, a sense of peace filling me. "Yes, we will." We watched as Sarah joined us, her presence a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Together, we would face whatever came next, the bonds of family strengthened by the trials we had endured. For Bruce, for us, and for the future, we would continue forward, hand in hand. "Ethan, you can't ignore Mason like this. He's our son," I pleaded with him, my voice breaking as I stood in the kitchen. "Is he, Lauren?" Is he really? Ethan's eyes bore into mine, filled with doubt and cold anger. Those words cut through me like a knife. I stared at Ethan, my husband of 14 years, the father of our children, struggling to process what he was implying. We were in our home, a charming suburban house in Ohio. The walls that saw our laughter and love now echoed with our tension and confusion. The recent trip to the amusement park was supposed to be a fun family outing, but it only magnified Ethan's coldness towards Mason, our middle son. Ethan, what are you talking about? Of course he's our son. Why would you say such a thing? I demanded, trying to hold back tears. Ethan glanced away, clenching his jaw. He's different, Lauren. I see it. The way he looks, the way he acts. He's not like the other kids. That's ridiculous. Mason is just going through a phase. He's a bit sensitive, but he's our boy. Do you hear yourself? My voice rose with frustration. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he turned around, grabbing his jacket and heading towards the door. I'm going out, he muttered. As the door closed behind him, I slumped into a chair, trying to steady my breathing. Memories of happier times flashed in my mind, birthday parties, family dinners, and vacations. But now, everything felt fractured, like the very foundation of our family was cracking. Later, I found Mason in his room, sitting on his bed with his toy cars scattered around. His big blue eyes looked up at me, confused and filled with unshed tears. Mom, why doesn't Dad play with me anymore? He asked. His innocent question broke my heart, and I had to fight back tears. I sat beside him, hugging him close. Dad's just busy with work, sweetheart. He loves you very much. Then why is he always so mad at me? Mason's voice trembled, and I felt his small body shaking against mine. I struggled to find the right words. Sometimes grown-ups have things on their minds that make them act differently, but it's not your fault, Mason. Never think that, okay? He nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering in his eyes. I kissed the top of his head and helped him with his cars, trying to give him some semblance of normalcy. When Ethan came home, I cornered him in the living room. You need to stop this, Ethan. Mason is hurting. He doesn't understand why you're distant. Ethan sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Lauren, I don't know. Something doesn't feel right. Are you seriously questioning his place in this family? I demanded, anger rising within me. I'm questioning everything, he snapped back. I can't shake this feeling that he's not mine. I was stunned into silence, watching as Ethan retreated upstairs. His words hung in the air like a toxic cloud, seeped into every corner of our home. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. What happened to the man I married, the father who once adored our children? I kept thinking of ways to bridge the gap between Ethan and Mason, but every scenario seemed impossible. The next morning, I decided to confront Ethan again. We need to talk, I said firmly as he was getting ready for work. He stopped, looking at me with tired eyes. What now? If you truly believe Mason isn't yours, why don't we get a DNA test? Will that ease your mind? Ethan paused, his face flushing with anger. You want to solve everything with a test? He spat. I want to solve this for Mason's sake, I replied calmly. We owe him that much. Ethan stared at me for a moment, then stormed out of the house without another word. I pressed my lips together, vowing to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. I couldn't let this tear our family apart. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. The tension at home was gnawing at me. During lunch, I decided to call Paula, my best friend since college. Hey, Paula, can we talk? It's urgent, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Of course, Lauren. Meet me at Joe's Cafe in half an hour, she replied. Perfect. Thanks. I rushed to Joe's Cafe, my mind swirling with thoughts. Seeing Paula's familiar smile as I walked in gave me a sense of relief. We found a quiet corner and ordered our usual coffees. So what's going on? Paula asked, concern etched on her face. Ethan thinks Mason isn't his son, I blurted out, barely containing my frustration. What? How could he even think that? Paula leaned in, her eyes wide. He's been distant, and it's affecting Mason. When I asked him why, he dropped this bombshell. Something about feeling Mason isn't like the other boys. Paula took a sip of her coffee, pondering my words. Do you think he believes you cheated? The question hit me hard. I don't know. We've had our ups and downs, but I never gave him a reason to doubt me. Paula nodded thoughtfully. You might need more than just a DNA test, Lauren. There could be something else behind his suspicions. Like what? I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. Maybe he's projecting. Maybe he's the one who did something wrong, Paula suggested gently. I hadn't considered that. You mean he cheated on me? It's possible. Sometimes the guilty ones are quick to accuse, Paula said, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. Back home, the tension was palpable. Ethan's cold shoulder towards Mason was getting more pronounced. At dinner, he barely spoke to Mason, focusing only on our eldest, Jake, and our youngest, Sarah. Dad, can we all go to the park on Saturday? Mason asked, his voice hopeful. Ethan barely looked up from his plate. We'll see, Mason. Mason's face fell, and I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. Why are you always ignoring me? Mason finally exploded, his small fists clenched. Ethan looked taken aback, but said nothing. I jumped in to defuse the situation. Mason, let's talk after dinner, okay? Finish your meal. After dinner, I found Mason in his room, tears streaming down his cheeks. Mom, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, Mason. Sometimes grown-ups don't act the way they should, I said, pulling him into a hug. But Dad hates me, he whispered. I fought the urge to cry and held him tighter. No, sweetheart, he's just not himself lately. That night, as Ethan worked late, I did some digging. Searching through his things, I found nothing out of the ordinary. Finally, I decided to confront Ethan directly. The next morning, as he was getting ready for work, I stopped him. Ethan, we need to clear this up. Why do you think Mason isn't yours? Do you think I cheated on you? He looked at me with tired eyes. I don't know what to think anymore, Lauren. Something just feels wrong. Well, it's tearing our family apart. For Mason's sake, let's do the DNA test, I insisted. Ethan shook his head, frustration evident. No, Lauren, I don't need a test to tell me what I already feel. With that, he left the house, leaving me more determined than ever to find out what was really going on. Ethan's behavior had changed drastically, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Paula might be right. As I tucked Mason into bed that night, I resolved to find the truth, no matter what it took. The following weekend, Ethan's coldness reached a new peak. He snapped at Mason for the smallest things, leaving a toy on the floor, not finishing his meal. I knew I had to take action. On Sunday morning, when Ethan went out for a run, I decided it was time. I went into Mason's room and began carefully collecting a few strands of his hair, making sure not to wake him up. Later that week, after submitting the samples to a private lab, my mind was in turmoil. I kept busy at work, but my thoughts drifted back to the test. What if the results confirmed Ethan's fears? What if they didn't? The days dragged on until I could finally pick up the results. Holding the envelope, my hands shook. I opened it, reading the words that turned my world upside down. No biological relation between Ethan Walker and Mason Walker. The shock settled in, but the next lines shattered my reality completely. No biological relation between Lauren Walker and Mason Walker. I leaned against the wall, the paper slipping from my fingers. My breath came in shallow gasps. Mason wasn't just not Ethan's son. He wasn't mine either. My mind raced with possibilities, none making any sense. That night, Ethan noticed my pale face and red eyes. Lauren, what's going on? I handed him the test results, unable to speak. He read them, and his face turned ashen. What does this mean? It means Mason isn't our son, I managed to say. I have to find out what happened. Ethan's anger quickly turned to confusion. How is that even possible? I'm going to find out, I replied, my voice resolute. Over the next week, I pieced together years of forgotten details. Laundry mishaps, hospital mix-ups, every memory ran through my mind. I decided to confront the hospital where Mason was born. I arranged a meeting with the hospital administrator. Sitting across from him in a small, sterile office, I felt the weight of my questions pressing down on me. Mrs. Walker, how can I help you today? He asked, glancing up from his papers. Years ago, I gave birth to a son here. I believe there might have been a mix-up. The DNA test shows he's not related to us biologically, I said, my voice steady but filled with urgency. The administrator's face paled. That's a serious accusation. Are you sure? I handed over the test results. I need to know the truth. He studied the papers and then nodded. We'll conduct an internal investigation immediately. Please understand this will take time. Days turned into weeks, each one filled with mounting anxiety. I barely spoke to Ethan. Our conversations reduced to urgent whispers when the kids weren't around. We both knew our lives were about to change forever. Finally, the hospital called. Mrs. Walker, we found a discrepancy in the records from that day. It appears another child was born around the same time as Mason. Can you come in? I hung up, a mix of dread and hope churning inside me. I needed to know who this child was and what happened to my real son. Ethan and I sat quietly in the waiting room, waiting for the answers that would shape our future. The hospital administrator finally emerged, holding a file. Mrs. Walker, Mr. Walker, we've discovered disturbing information. Your child might have been swapped deliberately. There's a name we need to check. Do you remember anyone named Heather Davis? The name jolted Ethan. He looked at me, horrified. Heather, she was someone I knew before we got married. My heart raced. We need to talk to her. Ethan's guilt-stricken face only confirmed my suspicions. Someone had manipulated our lives, and it was time to find out why. No matter the cost, I would uncover the truth, and I'd make them pay. We sat in the sterile office, the tension pressing down on us. The hospital administrator took a deep breath and started to explain. Heather Davis gave birth on the same day as you, Mrs. Walker. We're still investigating, but it seems there was a deliberate switch. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. This is insane. Heather, she had issues. But to switch babies? My world tilted. I held on to my anger, a lifeline amidst the chaos. Where is she now? We're trying to locate her, the administrator replied. In the meantime, we'll do everything to assist you. Leaving the hospital, I felt Ethan's eyes on me. We have to find her, Lauren. She's the key. That night, as our children slept, Ethan and I confronted each other in the living room. I knew we had to face the truth. Ethan, tell me everything about Heather. What do we need to know to find her? Ethan hesitated, then began. Heather and I dated briefly before we got married. It ended badly. She was furious and threatened to make my life hell. I never thought she'd go this far. What made her so angry? He sighed, rubbing his temples. I broke it off. She wanted more, and I didn't. She felt humiliated. I nodded, processing this new information. We'll need to dig into her past. Maybe we can find her through mutual contacts or social media. The next few days were a whirlwind of calls and messages. I contacted friends from that time, combed through old records, and finally, a lead appeared. An old friend of Ethan's knew Heather had left town years ago, but had recently been seen in a neighboring city. We drove to the address we got, an old, run-down apartment building. My heart pounded as I knocked on the door. An older woman answered, her eyes wary. We're looking for Heather Davis, I said, trying to steady my voice. You found her, she replied, her eyes narrowing. What do you want? I stepped forward, my anger giving me strength. It's about our son. You swapped him with your baby. We know everything. Heather didn't flinch. Instead, a smirk spread across her face. Took you long enough to figure it out, and now what? You think you can take him back? Ethan stepped in, barely containing his rage. How could you do this? To children? To us? Heather shrugged. You broke me, Ethan. I wanted you to suffer. It was easy enough. Switch the babies and walk away. Where is our son? I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. Heather's face twisted into a cruel grin. He's fine, living in foster care. His adoptive parents couldn't handle him. He's been in and out of homes. Happy now? Tears of anger and pain welled up in my eyes. Ethan grabbed my arm, pulling me back. We're calling the authorities. This ends now. We left Heather's apartment, the weight of the revelation pressing down on us. Back in the car, I took a deep breath. We need to find Mason. Every second counts. Ethan nodded. We'll get him back. We owe it to him. The next days were a blur of court hearings and paperwork. The DNA tests confirmed everything. We had the authorization to meet Mason, who had been living in a foster home for the past year. Seeing him for the first time was like a gut punch. He was thinner than Mason, with eyes that looked far too old for a child his age. He glanced up warily as we approached. Hi, Joshua. I'm Lauren, and this is Ethan. We're your real parents, I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. He studied us for a moment before nodding. Are you taking me home? Yes, we are. We're here to bring you home, Ethan replied, his voice breaking. As we left the foster home with Joshua, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. There was so much to mend, so much damage done. But now, our first step was to heal our family and ensure that those responsible paid for their actions. Back at home, I saw Mason's confused face as he met Joshua for the first time. Mom, who's he? Mason asked, eyes wide. He's your brother, I said, kneeling beside him. We're going to be a family, together. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure: Heather and Ethan's betrayal wouldn't destroy us. We would rebuild and find strength in each other. No longer victims, we were now warriors, fighting for our family's future. Confronting Ethan with the DNA results felt like reliving a nightmare. We stood in the living room, the icy silence between us cutting deeper than any words. "Ethan, these results make it clear. Mason isn't biologically ours, and neither is Joshua," I said, holding the papers out for him. Ethan took the results, his hands shaking. "How could this happen? How could I allow this?" I stared at him, unable to contain my anger any longer. "You need to tell me everything, Ethan. Every detail now." Ethan sank into the couch, burying his face in his hands. "It was years ago. Heather, she somehow knew you were pregnant. She showed up one night, threatening to ruin everything. She said she would expose our affair unless I let her do something. I thought she was bluffing." "What did she make you do, Ethan?" I demanded. He looked up, his eyes filled with regret. "She showed up at the hospital the day you gave birth. I didn't know what she planned until it was too late. I let her switch the babies, believing she wouldn't follow through, but she did." I could barely breathe. "So you knew," I whispered. "You let this happen and you never told me?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I thought I could keep it buried, live with the guilt, but it consumed me. That's why I was so distant with Mason. I couldn't bear the reminder of what I allowed." I stood up, pacing the room, anger boiling inside me. "Ethan, this isn't just about you feeling guilty. You've ruined our lives. You let an innocent boy suffer in foster care while we raised a child that wasn't ours. How could you do this to us?" Ethan sobbed, the weight of his guilt crushing him. "I'm sorry, Lauren. I thought I was protecting us, but I only made things worse." "Sorry isn't good enough," I snapped. "We need to find Heather and bring her to justice. We need to make sure Mason and Joshua know the truth and get the help they need." Ethan wiped his tears, a steely resolve slowly replacing his despair. "You're right. We have to fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." "You're damn right you will," I replied, my voice cold. We contacted a lawyer first thing in the morning, outlining our case and the sordid details of Heather's actions. The lawyer assured us that charges could be pressed and justice would be served. But that wasn't enough for me. I needed to confront Heather again, this time making it clear that her deceit would have consequences. I messaged her, arranging a meeting at a secluded cafe outside town. When Ethan and I arrived, Heather was already seated, her smirk plastered across her face. "Back for more?" I leaned in, my voice low and fierce. "This ends now, Heather. We know everything. We're pressing charges, and you will pay for what you've done." Heather's smile only widened. "Oh, Lauren, do you think a few charges will scare me? I've spent my life manipulating people like you. I'll find a way out of this, and you know it." Ethan clenched his fists, stepping forward. "You're not getting away this time, Heather. We have too much evidence against you." Heather laughed, the sound icy and cruel. "Evidence? I've buried worse secrets." I cut her off. "This isn't just about our children anymore. You've wrecked families. You should be afraid, Heather, because we're not stopping until you're behind bars." Heather's face finally showed a flicker of fear. "You're making a big mistake." "No, you did," I replied firmly. As Ethan and I left the cafe, I felt a determination stronger than ever. We'd take the necessary legal steps and pursue justice, no matter how long it took. Mason, Joshua, and our family deserved closure. This war wasn't just about revenge, it was about setting things right. Back home, I hugged Mason and Joshua tightly. "We're going to be okay," I whispered. "We're going to get through this together." The road ahead was daunting, but with my family by my side and the truth finally out, I was ready to face whatever came next. Heather would pay for her sins, and we would rebuild the lives she tried to destroy. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. I filed for divorce, the culmination of lost trust and broken promises. Ethan and I agreed it was the best way forward. Our children needed stable, loving environments, something our fractured relationship couldn't provide. I met with our lawyer to discuss the details. "Make sure the papers are airtight," I instructed. "Ethan's actions can't be ignored. We need to protect the children." "Understood, Mrs. Walker. We'll also proceed with the charges against Heather Davis. Her deception has serious legal ramifications," the lawyer assured me. Ethan's professional life took a nosedive as the news spread. Colleagues and clients distanced themselves, seeing him as the man who allowed such a heinous act. His reputation crumbled, leaving him to face the consequences of his past actions. During this chaos, I began my own investigation to track Heather's every move. I dug into her past, her connections, everything. Heather's life was a web of deceit, and I was determined to untangle it. One evening, I confronted Ethan. "I need your help to find my real child," I said. Ethan nodded, remorse evident in his eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes." We started by visiting social services, poring over records, tracing every lead. We found Heather had a history of manipulative relationships, using people for her gain. But our focus was finding our son, the missing piece of our fractured family. Finally, a breakthrough came. Our investigator called with a lead. A boy named Joshua, who had been moved from foster care to foster care, his life shadowed by instability and neglect. "Lauren, we found him. Joshua is in a foster home not far from here," Ethan informed me, his eyes filled with hope and regret. "We can bring him home." My heart raced as we drove to the foster home. When we met Joshua, my heart ached seeing his tired eyes, the wariness that comes from a life of uncertainty. Yet there was an undeniable connection. "Joshua, we're your parents," I said, my voice trembling. "We've come to take you home." Joshua studied us, his expression a mix of skepticism and hope. "Really? You're my real mom and dad?" "Yes, Joshua," Ethan replied, tears in his eyes. "We're here to make things right." Bringing Joshua home felt surreal. As Mason and Joshua met, confusion and curiosity marked their interactions. "Mom, he's my brother?" Mason asked. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, hugging him tightly. "We're all together now." Amidst the legal battles, Heather's arrogance faltered. She continued to deny responsibility, her manipulative nature trying to twist the narrative in her favor. I knew we had to expose her fully, make sure she could never do this to another family. I arranged for a meeting with a local news station. "I have a story that needs to be told," I told the journalist. "It's about deceit, manipulation, and the fight for justice. Heather Davis must be exposed." The exposé aired, revealing Heather's vile actions and the suffering she caused. Public outcry was swift and fierce. Ethan's professional downfall accelerated, while Heather faced legal consequences and social ostracism. In the midst of this, Ethan's attempts to plead for forgiveness fell on deaf ears. I couldn't forget the pain, or how his actions unraveled our lives. We may share the journey of finding Joshua, but our paths had irrevocably diverged. Finally, we stood together, filing the last of the paperwork. "This isn't just for us," I said, holding his gaze. "It's for our children. They deserve justice, stability, and love." Ethan nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know. I'm sorry for everything." As we stepped out of the lawyer's office, the weight of the world seemed a little lighter. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we had taken the first steps towards healing and justice. For Mason, for Joshua, and for ourselves, we would rebuild, stronger and united, making sure the past never repeated itself. The story wasn't just ours anymore. It was about resilience, justice, and the unyielding strength of a broken family determined to heal. The swirling chaos of our lives found a new focus, confronting Heather publicly and ensuring she faced the consequences of her actions. A few days after the news segment aired, my phone rang. It was a journalist from the local news station. "Mrs. Walker, the public response to your story has been overwhelming. People want to hear from you directly. Would you consider an on-air interview?" I hesitated, then nodded to myself. Yes, it's time people knew the whole truth. The next morning, I sat across from the news anchor, the studio lights glaring. The camera rolled, capturing every tense moment. "Lauren, your story has touched many. What drives you to seek justice so fiercely?" the anchor asked. I took a deep breath. "This isn't just about my family. Heather's actions have ruined lives. She needs to be held accountable, not just for what she did to us, but to prevent her from harming anyone else." As the interview ended, I felt a grim satisfaction. Heather couldn't hide anymore. A few days later, an unexpected call came through. "Lauren, this is Heather." Her voice dripped with a mix of anger and false sweetness. "We need to talk." I froze, then spoke firmly. "Where and when?" "Tomorrow at noon, the old warehouse on 5th Street, she said, the line going dead before I could respond. The next day, Ethan and I arrived at the warehouse. Heather stood in the shadows, looking irritated but unfazed. You think you've won, she spat, stepping forward, her face a mask of contempt. This isn't over. Ethan, you told me you'd keep this buried, she sneered, her eyes narrowing. Ethan took a step forward, his voice shaking with rage. You destroyed our lives, Heather. This isn't about us anymore. You need to face justice. Justice? She laughed bitterly. You think airing dirty laundry on TV will change anything? I've lived in shadows, thrived in chaos. You can't touch me. I stared at her, my resolve hardening. We will see, Heather. You're facing charges, and we'll make sure everyone knows who you are. Heather shrugged. Fine. Fight all you want. But remember, the real damage is already done. With that, she turned and walked away, her figure swallowed by the darkness. Ethan and I exchanged a weary glance, knowing that while the battle was far from over, we had taken a crucial step. The next weeks were a blur of court dates and media coverage. Each appearance chipped away at Heather's bravado. Her unrepentant nature was laid bare, fueling our determination. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Heather, seated at the defense table, looked unaffected, but I knew better. She thrived on manipulation, but this was a different arena. I took the stand, recounting the pain and betrayal. Ethan followed, his voice breaking as he admitted his part in the deception. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury delivered a swift verdict, guilty on multiple counts of child endangerment and fraud. Heather's face paled, her bravado crumbling. Outside the courthouse, Ethan and I stood with Mason and Joshua, the weight of the past slowly lifting. It's over, I whispered, hugging Joshua tightly. We've won. Joshua looked up, his eyes filled with hope. Does this mean we can be a real family now? Yes, Joshua. This means we can finally heal, I replied, my voice firm. As we walked to the car, I felt a sense of closure. Heather's vile deeds were exposed, and justice had been served. The journey had been long and painful, but we emerged stronger, united in our resolve to rebuild. Later at home, the kids played in the yard, their laughter a balm to my weary soul. I watched them, feeling a glimmer of hope. We had faced our demons and against all odds come out victorious. I knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but with Heather out of our lives and the truth laid bare, we were finally free to move forward, to create the family we always dreamt of. The scars remain, but they serve as reminders of our resilience, our strength. And as I embraced my children, I knew we would face the future together, unbroken and determined. Justice was more than a verdict. It was reclaiming our lives, our dignity. It was a new beginning, and this time we would write our own story, free from the shadows of Heather's deceit. A month after the trial, life began to settle into a fragile normalcy. I stood outside our newly purchased home, taking in the fresh paint and inviting front porch. It symbolized a new beginning for my boys and me. Mason, Joshua, come help me with these boxes, I called out from the driveway. The boys ran over, their faces filled with excitement. This place is awesome, Mom, Mason exclaimed, grabbing a box and heading inside. Joshua followed, a bit more hesitant, but with a small smile on his face. Can we decorate our rooms however we want? Of course, I replied, tussling Joshua's hair. This is your home now. You can make it yours. As we unpacked, friends and family stopped by, offering their support. My parents arrived with a warm casserole and comforting words. We're so proud of you, Lauren, my mom said, pulling me into a tight hug. Thanks, Mom. It's been a tough journey, but we're finally moving forward, I replied, feeling the weight lifting from my shoulders. Despite the new beginnings, whispers of Ethan's downfall reached us. He lost his job and faced social ostracism. He called several times, apologizing, but the damage was too deep. One evening, as I put the boys to bed, Ethan showed up at the door. Lauren, can we talk? He asked, his voice heavy with regret. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Make it quick, Ethan. The boys are inside. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again. For everything. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be a part of their lives, he pleaded. I don't know if that's possible right now, I replied, my voice steady. They need stability, and your presence only stirs up the past. Ethan nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. I understand. Can you tell them I love them, and that I'm here if they ever need me? I will, I said, watching him walk away. Inside, I found solace in the laughter of my children. The bonds we rekindled were growing stronger every day, their smiles a testament to our resilience. A few weeks later, I received a phone call from Paula, my best friend. Hey, Lauren. Guess who just got a promotion? Dinner's on me tonight. Paula's unwavering support kept me grounded throughout our ordeal. We met at our favorite restaurant, catching up on life. I can't believe how everything turned out, Paula said, sipping her wine. You're stronger than you think, Lauren. I didn't have a choice, I replied, smiling. But now it's about building a better future for Mason and Joshua. The next day, the boys and I visited Heather's neighborhood one last time. Heather, now a pariah, watched us from her dilapidated porch, her face twisted in bitterness and regret. Mom, can we go now? Joshua asked, gripping my hand. Yes, sweetie, we're done here, I replied, turning away from the remnants of our past. As we walked back to the car, I felt a sense of closure. Heather's reign of manipulation and cruelty had ended, leaving us with the strength to rebuild. Our new home became a sanctuary, filled with love and laughter. Ethan's absence allowed the healing process to take root, and our lives slowly knit back together. Every evening as the sun set, I watched Mason and Joshua play in the yard, their joy a reminder of our journey. We had endured so much, but our hearts were resilient, able to find happiness again. Mom, watch this, Mason called out, performing an impressive cartwheel. Great job, Mason! I cheered, clapping my hands. Joshua joined in, his smile widening with each passing day. We're going to be okay, aren't we, Mom? Yes, we are, Joshua, I replied, pulling them both into a hug. We're stronger together. As the days turned into weeks, our family found a new rhythm. With each passing moment, we embraced the future, determined to write our story on our own terms. Standing on the porch of our new home, I knew that we had not only survived, but thrived. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined us. Instead, they were reminders of our strength, our resilience, and the unbreakable bond of family. Are you ever going to leave, Julia? Jeremy sneered, reclining on the sofa. You heard him, Megan added, curling her lips into a cruel smile. This house is too small for 3 adults. Too small, I replied evenly, and yet somehow you both managed to fit your affair in it. They smirked in unison. You've got until tonight, Jeremy said, or we toss you out ourselves. I'll leave, I agreed, smirking back, but I promise you'll regret it. Earlier that day had started as any other. I jumped on a Zoom call, sending off designs to a client. I had just wrapped up the presentation and closed my laptop when I heard the garage door open. Jeremy was home early again. I sighed and went downstairs, my mind already swirling with the questions that had plagued me for weeks. What's up with you coming home in the middle of the day so often? I asked, opening the fridge to prepare lunch. Work's changed, Jeremy said curtly, not meeting my eyes. Taking on a new project with Megan. It's demanding. I paused, gripping a butter knife more tightly than necessary. Megan, huh? You two seem to get along well. Jeremy shrugged. She's ambitious, knows what she wants. I decided that today would be different. I'd find my proof. I waited until he left for another urgent meeting and went directly to his study. I rifled through his desk drawers, my fingers trembling, until I found what I was looking for. There it was, a receipt for 2 at that swanky restaurant he claimed he could never afford to take me to. And another, a hotel receipt. Room for 2, also in Megan's name. Just as I put the papers back, I heard the front door open. Jeremy's voice, loud and carefree, floated through the hallway. My heart raced. I barely had time to hide the evidence when they walked in. Well, look who's curious, Megan purred, leaning against the doorframe. Her presence in my home was like a cold slap to my face. What's the meaning of this? I snapped, holding up the receipts. Oh, those, Jeremy said nonchalantly. Megan's moving in. There's no room for you anymore, Julia. My mind swirled, emotions a chaotic storm. But I locked them down immediately. I set down the receipts carefully on the desk and squared my shoulders. You both can have your fun, I said calmly, stepping forward. But let me assure you, it's going to cost you. Like we care, Megan laughed, linking arms with Jeremy. There's the door. I walked out without another word. The weight of the betrayal tried to anchor me down, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Through sheer will, I made it up to the bedroom. I pulled out an old suitcase and began to pack. My phone buzzed. It was Emily, my daughter, checking in from college. I stared at her message for a beat, tears threatening to spill. I typed back briskly, "Everything's fine. See you soon." I picked up the phone again, but this time to make a call that would set my new plan in motion. Getting a junk removal service lined up for tomorrow without raising suspicion was crucial. As I moved through the house, removing traces of my life piece by piece, a realization settled in my bones. I wasn't just packing up my things, I was clearing space for something new, something stronger. Think she'll go quietly? I overheard Megan ask Jeremy downstairs. She'll be gone, Jeremy assured her. She knows better. I glanced at the framed family picture on the hallway table, the three of us smiling at a happier time. Oh, how wrong he was. With one last look, I turned off the light and shut the door behind me, resolute. Their little game had just begun. The next morning, I woke up early and started packing my things discreetly. I knew Jeremy and Megan would be sleeping in, probably enjoying their little victory. My hands moved quickly, but quietly. Drawer by drawer, I filled my suitcase with necessities. I took one last look around our room. Jeremy's scent still lingered on the bedsheets. I shook my head, dismissing the sentiment. It was time to move on. My phone buzzed, and I answered quietly. Yes, I need the junk removal service today, as soon as possible. Got it, ma'am, the voice on the other end confirmed. We'll be there in an hour. I headed to the kitchen to gather more things. As I wrapped up, I heard footsteps on the staircase. Jeremy walked in, rubbing his eyes. He looked mildly surprised to see me. You're still here? He asked, a hint of annoyance creeping into his voice. Yes, but not for long, I replied coolly, continuing to pack a box. The removal service will be here soon. He snorted. Trying to make this dramatic, aren't you? Just ensuring I don't leave anything behind, I said, not bothering to look at him. He returned upstairs, presumably to inform Megan. I knew they wouldn't cause a scene while the removal crew was here. Moments later, a knock at the door announced their arrival. Morning, ma'am. What needs to go? The lead guy asked, glancing around. Everything, I replied, steady. Every last piece that isn't nailed down. The team got to work, moving swiftly through the house. I busied myself with smaller items, directing them now and then. From the corner of my eye, I saw Emily's photo on the mantel. Her bright smile gave me strength. I tucked the photo safely into my handbag. One of the team members gave me a sympathetic look. I didn't need their pity. I needed to stay focused. Jeremy and Megan eventually parked themselves on the couch, watching the proceedings like hawks. Megan smirked at me. Feels good to downsize, doesn't it? She taunted. I met her gaze calmly. We'll see who downsizes in the end, I replied, words laced with subtle promise. Once most of my belongings were packed up, I took a moment to send a message to Emily, updating her indirectly. Later that afternoon, after everything was loaded up, I left the house with a final glance. See you around, I said to Jeremy and Megan. Their laughter followed me to the driveway, but it didn't shake me. At the hotel where I booked a room, I set my bags down and dialed my lawyer. Mr. Harris, it's Julia Taylor. I'd like to discuss my rights and next steps. Of course, Julia. Let's set up a meeting tomorrow, he replied. I hung up and let out a breath. This wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. Next, I dialed Emily. Her voice on the other end brought immediate comfort. Hey, Mom. You okay? I'm fine, sweetie. Just moving into a hotel for a while. I didn't want to worry you before your exams. Don't worry about me, Emily assured. We'll get through this. As we talked, I felt a surge of determination. Jeremy and Megan thought they had me cornered, but they underestimated my resolve. With Emily's support and a few strategic moves, I knew they'd soon realize their mistake. Once off the call, I laid out a new plan. Tomorrow, I'd consult the lawyer, start gathering evidence, and prepare for what was to come. Tonight, however, was for rest and regrouping. The real battle would begin soon enough. The following morning, I met with Mr. Harris. He was a sharp, seasoned lawyer who immediately understood the complexity of my situation. Good to see you, Julia. Let's go over your options, he started, spreading out some paperwork. I want to make sure I'm protected and that Jeremy and Megan face consequences for what they've done, I said firmly. We can start with a formal separation agreement to secure your rights and then consider divorce. Additionally, if you have any evidence of infidelity or financial misconduct, it will strengthen your case, Mr. Harris explained. I nodded. I have some receipts and bank statements. I also suspect there's more if I dig deeper into his work files. He leaned forward, interested. That could be very useful. Document everything and make copies. We need to build a solid case. If leaving his office, I felt more empowered, but the work was just beginning. First, I called Emily. "Hey, Mom, how did it go?" she asked. "Good, we have a plan. Can you check Dad's old laptop? He might have left something incriminating." "Sure, I'll check tonight," Emily agreed. "Stay strong, Mom." I headed to a local cafe to start organizing the financial documents. The more I examined, the clearer it became that Jeremy had been hiding money. A lot of it. I noted everything down, preparing for what was to come. Later that evening, Emily called me back, sounding excited. "Mom, I found something. Dad's been transferring large sums to an account I've never seen before. Must be offshore." "Great work, Emily," I said, a smile spreading across my face. "We'll include that in our evidence." We arranged to meet the next day to go over everything she had found. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with the possibilities. Early the next morning, I reached out to a moving company to help Emily pack up her things from the house. As they arrived at the old house, Jeremy stormed out, his face flushed with anger. "What is all this?" he demanded, glaring at Emily and the movers. "Just moving out what belongs to Mom and me," Emily replied calmly. "There's no place for our things here anymore, right?" Jeremy fumed. "You'll regret this, Emily." "I think you're the one who'll regret everything," she shot back, not backing down. I watched from a distance, proud of her strength. Later, Emily met me at the hotel with her findings. "Look at this," she said, handing me printouts. "Dad's been funneling money through fake accounts, and Megan's been in on it." I scanned the documents, my resolve hardening. This was exactly what we needed. "Excellent work, Emily. We'll hand these over to Mr. Harris first thing tomorrow." As we packed up the documents, I received a furious call from Jeremy. "You took the furniture. I can't even sit down in my own house." I let him rant before replying, "Should have thought of that before you betrayed me. Jeremy, you'll be hearing from my lawyer soon." "Bitch," he spat and hung up. Emily and I exchanged looks, both of us knowing we were just getting started. Tomorrow, I'd consult with Mr. Harris about the financial inconsistencies and prepare our next move. By evening, we had moved into a nearby hotel, ready to plan our strategy further. Emily stayed close, working with me to compile everything we needed. The calm before the storm allowed us to strengthen our bond and sharpen our focus. As we settled in for the night, Emily turned to me with a determined look. "We'll make them pay, Mom. They won't know what hit them." I nodded, feeling a fierce determination. Jeremy and Megan thought they could walk all over us, but they'd soon learn the cost of betrayal. It was time to hit them where it hurt the most. The next morning, I woke up early to meet Mr. Harris. The evidence Emily had found was pivotal. We presented everything: the financial transfers, the offshore account, and Megan's involvement. Mr. Harris reviewed the documents with a steely expression. "This is substantial, Julia. We'll leverage this information to our advantage." "Good. I want Jeremy and Megan to feel the full weight of their actions," I replied, my voice unwavering. Back at the hotel, Emily and I continued plotting. Then my phone rang. It was Jeremy, and he sounded panicked. "What did you do with the furniture, Julia?" he demanded. "Missing a comfy seat, Jeremy?" I teased. "All your new girlfriend's doing, I guess." "You know damn well we can't replace those things easily," he growled. "Maybe we can strike a deal," I said, leaning into the opportunity. "You wire $5,000 to my account, and I'll tell you where your precious chairs are." I'll think about it," he stammered before hanging up. That got him rattled? Emily noted with a grin. I nodded. "It's just the beginning. We'll hit them gradually." The following days were crucial. Jeremy, foolishly desperate to get his things back, transferred the money, and I redirected it to cover the moving expenses. With a part of the dealings in motion, I sought the next strategic strike. I called Jeremy again. "Thought about my offer?" "All right," he said begrudgingly. "Send them back, but this better be everything." "Patience," I replied. "Check your email for the address." After hanging up, I went back to compiling the last of our evidence, double-checking all the details. Ready to send it off, I made an anonymous email and attached the files for Jeremy's boss at work. "Mr. Anderson will have a field day with this," I muttered, hitting send. Within hours, chaos erupted. Jeremy called back, voice frantic. "Julia, my boss wants to see me. What did you do?" "Oh, just ensured the right people got the right information," I replied coolly. "I made sure your reckless actions get the attention they deserve." "You're playing with fire," he shouted. No, Jeremy, I'm controlling the blaze you started, I countered before ending the call. By the next morning, Mr. Anderson contacted me. He wanted to discuss the evidence and potential repercussions. I agreed to meet him at his office with Mr. Harris. As we entered the office, Mr. Anderson greeted us solemnly. Mrs. Taylor, thank you for coming. I'm disturbed by what I've reviewed. I felt it was necessary for you to know what's been happening, I affirmed. Mr. Harris laid out the details. Jeremy and Megan manipulated company finances and violated numerous policies. We trust you understand the gravity. Mr. Anderson nodded. We'll conduct our investigation, but this looks serious. There will be severe consequences for both parties. Leaving the office, I felt a surge of satisfaction. We were closer to delivering justice. Emily hugged me, sharing the triumph. What's our next step? She asked, eyes bright with anticipation. Now we let the dominoes fall, I said confidently, and prepare for the fallout. Later that day, I received another frantic call from Jeremy. What did you tell my boss? They've suspended me pending investigation. Just the truth, I answered briskly. You should have thought about the consequences. You're going to regret this, Julia, he threatened. I smiled, calm and composed. No, Jeremy, this is just the beginning. You'll see. Hanging up, I turned to Emily. Get ready for the next phase. We've only just begun. With our plan in motion and the stakes growing higher, I knew Jeremy and Megan were on the brink of facing what they had long evaded: accountability. Together, Emily and I had turned the tide, and now it was time to see how far we could go. A week later, I received an urgent call from Mr. Anderson. Mrs. Taylor, can you come into the office today? We need to discuss your findings in detail, he said. Of course. I'll be there shortly, I replied, already gathering the remaining evidence I'd planned to share. Emily decided to come with me, eager to see justice in action. As we entered the building, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. This was the tipping point. Mr. Anderson met us at the front, leading us into a conference room where a few other stern-faced executives waited. Thank you for coming, he began. We've reviewed the initial evidence, but we need further clarification. I handed over the detailed documents, financial transfers, and incriminating emails. Mr. Harris, who accompanied us, explained, Jeremy and Megan have been involved in fraudulent activities, transferring company funds and covering their tracks poorly. The offshore accounts are just the beginning. One executive shook his head. This is beyond unacceptable. Rest assured, Mrs. Taylor, there will be severe repercussions. Emily leaned in, whispering, They won't get away with this. As we laid out the final pieces, the executives grew more animated. This has far-reaching implications, Mr. Anderson said. We'll need to suspend Jeremy and Megan immediately and launch a full investigation. Leaving the office, I felt a heavy weight lift. We were finally turning the tide. Later that afternoon, Jeremy called, desperate. They suspended me, Julia. They're investigating everything. You need to fix this, he pleaded. I won't fix your mess, Jeremy, I replied coldly. You brought this on yourself. Megan was on the line minutes later. You treacherous bitch, do you know what you've done? Yes, Megan. I made sure you faced the consequences of your actions, I said calmly. You'll regret this, she threatened before hanging up. Emily and I spent the rest of the day finalizing our legal steps, ensuring our case was airtight. The next morning, news broke about Jeremy and Megan's suspension. Their dirty laundry was now public, and the fallout was immediate. We went to the office one more time to finalize our statements. Jeremy and Megan were there, looking defeated. Jeremy tried one last-ditch effort. Julia, let's talk this through. We can find a way to settle this quietly, he said, attempting to sound reasonable. I shook my head. There's no quiet way out of this. Jeremy, you've lost all respect and integrity. Mr. Anderson stepped in. Mr. Taylor, Miss Phillips, the evidence is insurmountable. The company is pressing charges and there will be civil suits as well. Jeremy turned on Megan, desperation in his eyes. This is all your fault. You pushed for this. Me? You were in it up to your neck. Megan shot back, her voice shrill. Their bickering filled the room, each trying to deflect blame. It was a symphony of desperation and guilt. Finally, I faced them. Both of you underestimated me, thinking I'd just disappear quietly, but you gave me the fire I needed. Leaving that office, I felt Emily's hand in mine, both of us stronger, united. We had faced them down and come out victorious. That night we celebrated quietly, knowing the battle wasn't fully over, but recognizing the milestone we had reached. Over dinner, Emily looked at me, her eyes shining with admiration. "You did it, Mom. You stood your ground, and they paid for it." "We did it," I corrected, raising my glass. "Together." From that day forward, our focus shifted to rebuilding our lives, our home. Jeremy and Megan's fight for legal survival would continue, but we had already won the greatest victory, reclaiming our dignity and strength. Jeremy and Megan were summoned to the company's headquarters the next day. Word of their misdemeanors had spread, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. I decided to witness the spectacle in person. Emily came with me, both of us blending into the background of the bustling corporate environment. We watched as Jeremy and Megan were escorted into a large conference room where Mr. Anderson and several other executives awaited them. The room fell silent as the door shut behind us. Mr. Anderson stood, a stack of papers in his hand. "Jeremy, Megan, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Embezzlement, fraud, and misappropriation of funds. We've begun a full audit and preliminary findings are damning." Jeremy's face flushed. "This is absurd. I demand to speak to someone higher up." "There's no higher up for you," Mr. Anderson said firmly. "You've betrayed this company and its employees." Megan tried to interject, her voice trembling. We can explain." "Save it," another executive cut in, his voice icy. "We're pressing charges and will ensure you're held accountable to the fullest extent." Jeremy turned to Megan, his eyes wild. "You idiot, you were supposed to keep those records clean." "I did everything you asked." Megan snapped back. "If you hadn't been so greedy." Their argument spiraled, loud enough to echo through the halls. Emily and I exchanged glances, both of us grimly satisfied watching their public meltdown. Another executive cleared his throat. "Enough. You both will be escorted out and served with notice of termination and legal action." Jeremy's demeanor shifted, desperation taking over. "Please, there must be something we can do to fix this." Mr. Anderson's expression softened for a fraction of a second, but then he steeled himself. "The time for fixing things is long past. You're a liability to this company and a disgrace to your positions." As Jeremy and Megan were led out, heads hanging low, Emily and I quietly exited the building. Outside, she turned to me, her eyes glowing with satisfaction. "That was intense," she said. "Yes, but it was necessary," I replied. "They needed to face the consequences." We didn't have much time to reflect before the next phase of our plan kicked into gear. I coordinated with Mr. Harris to finalize the divorce papers and ensure all our claims were solid. The story leaked to the press, and Jeremy and Megan's personal lives started to unravel. Reporters camped outside their homes, seeking comments on the scandal. Their reputations sank further with each passing day. Back at the hotel, Emily and I were inundated with calls from old friends and acquaintances expressing their shock and support. It was heartening to know we were not alone in this. One evening, Emily looked up from her laptop. "Mom, have you seen this?" She showed me a news article detailing Megan's involvement in another company's scandal years ago, hinting at a pattern of unethical behavior. "This will bury her," I said, forwarding the article to Mr. Anderson. "Every skeleton in their closets will come out now." That night, Jeremy called again, but this time his voice was broken. "Julia, please, can we talk?" "There's nothing left to talk about," I said firmly. "You made your choices, now live with them." The line went dead, and I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. Emily wrapped her arm around me. "We did it, Mom. They're facing everything they deserve." "Yes, we did," I agreed, hugging her tightly. "And it's finally over." As we prepared to move back into our new home, there's a sense of renewed hope and strength between us. Jeremy and Megan would continue to unravel in the public eye, but Emily and I were moving forward, stronger and undeniably triumphant. The news hit like a tidal wave. Jeremy and Megan were officially arrested for embezzlement and fraud. Their mugshots splashed across the evening news, a stark contrast to the polished personas they'd flaunted. Emily and I watched the broadcast from our new living room, a sense of vindication washing over us. "They're actually going to jail," Emily murmured, almost in disbelief. "Justice has a way of catching up," I replied, feeling the weight of our struggle lifting. The following day, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jeremy's assets being seized. A team of officials carted out electronics, valuable artworks, even his beloved car. The neighbor across the street watched. eyes wide with curiosity. "This is just the beginning," one of the officers remarked to me. "There's a lot more to account for." I nodded, stepping back inside. Emily looked up from her studies and smiled, her eyes bright with satisfaction. "Mom, did you see that? They took the car!" "I saw, sweetheart. It's all falling apart for them," I said, sitting beside her. A week later, we headed to the courtroom for the preliminary hearing. Jeremy and Megan sat at the defense table, looking disheveled and hollow-eyed. Their lawyers whispered urgent instructions, but the damage was already done. Mr. Harris sat beside me, exuding calm confidence. "This will be swift. They don't have a leg to stand on," he assured. The judge read out the charges, detailing every egregious crime. As the list grew longer, Jeremy fidgeted, shooting desperate glances at Megan. Emily squeezed my hand, offering silent support. The prosecutor presented our evidence, each piece more damning than the last. When they showed the financial transfers to the offshore account, the courtroom buzzed with disbelief. Jeremy finally broke. "It was all Megan's idea," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger. "She orchestrated everything." "Liar, you told me to do it!" Megan shrieked back, her face contorted with rage. The judge banged his gavel. "Order in the court," he commanded. Turning to address both, he said, "Your actions have consequences. Prepare for the full force of the law." Leaving the courthouse, Emily and I felt an incredible sense of liberation. This was the turning point, their reality of facing the repercussions of their heinous actions. In the ensuing weeks, Jeremy and Megan were convicted, their sentences making headlines. The once powerful duo was now the cautionary tale of our community. Emily and I focused on rebuilding our lives. The house felt lighter, filled with new memories and hopes. One evening over dinner, Emily looked at me with a contented smile. "We've come a long way, Mom. Proud of us," she said. "I'm proud of you too, Emily. You've been my rock through all this," I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude. As our lives began to stabilize, I received a surprising message from an old college friend who had heard about my ordeal. She invited me for coffee. It had been years since I'd seen her, and the idea of reconnecting felt like a new beginning. The cafe meeting was delightful. We laughed, reminisced, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the joy of genuine friendship without the shadow of betrayal over us. Returning home, Emily greeted me warmly. "How was it?" "Wonderful," I said, hugging her. "We're finally moving forward." Jeremy and Megan's trials were nearing their end, and the severe sentences they received cemented their fates as examples of consequences catching up with reckless actions. Watching the news report, Emily whispered, "They got what they deserved." "Yes, they did, and we got our peace back," I affirmed without regret. As we looked ahead, our bond stronger than ever, a sense of complete closure enveloped us. The storm had passed, leaving us clear skies and the promise of brighter days. With Jeremy and Megan behind bars, life took on a new rhythm. Emily and I settled comfortably into our new home. Mornings were no longer filled with dread, but with the promise of new beginnings. I found solace in my work as a graphic designer, delving into projects with renewed enthusiasm. One sunny morning, as I sipped coffee on the porch, Emily joined me with her laptop. "Mom, I've been thinking, how about we start a small business together? We could combine our skills, your design expertise and my marketing knowledge." I looked at her, surprised but excited. "That's a great idea, Emily. We could create something meaningful, something ours." She beamed. "Let's brainstorm tonight. I have so many ideas." That evening turned into a planning session, filled with laughter and creativity. We mapped out our venture, imagining a future untainted by past betrayals. The name we chose, Resilient Designs, felt appropriate, encapsulating our journey and newfound strength. Days turned to weeks, and our vision slowly materialized. We launched our business, received our first clients, and felt a growing sense of accomplishment. Every new project was a step forward, a testament to our resilience. But one evening, a familiar name flashed on my phone. Picking it up, I heard an all-too-familiar, panicked voice. "Julia." Megan sobbed. "Please, you have to help me." "What do you think you're doing calling me?" I replied, anger bubbling. "Please, I'm scared. Jeremy's manipulating turning everyone against me," she cried. I took a deep breath, reminding myself how deep her betrayals ran. "You made your choices, Megan. Now live with the consequences." She begged and pleaded, but my resolve remained firm. Ending the call, I felt a weight lift. Emily walked in, sensing the tension. "Who was that?" she asked. "Megan," I said simply. "And?" "I let her know she's on her own. She needs to face the reality she created." Emily nodded, hugging me. "Good. She deserves it." Our business continued to grow, each success a reminder of how far we had come. We balanced work and life, cherishing the moments we spent together. One afternoon in between client meetings, Emily brought up a topic I hadn't considered in years. "Mom, have you thought about dating again?" she asked gently. I laughed. "Not really. It's been a long time. But who knows, maybe someday." Emily smiled. "You deserve happiness, Mom. Don't close off the possibility." Her words stayed with me. A few weeks later, I decided to take a small step forward. I reconnected with that old college friend I had coffee with and found joy in our newfound friendship. Slowly, the idea of dating began to feel less daunting. One evening, Emily set up an online profile for me, giggling as she chose pictures. "Trust me, Mom, you're going to have a great time." Reluctantly, I agreed. Soon, messages trickled in, and I found myself laughing at silly conversations with strangers who might become friends, or more. As my life expanded, so did Resilient Designs. We hired a small team, moved into a cozy little office, and watched our dreams flourish. Our clients appreciated our work, often commenting on the passion and love we brought to each project. One day, as Emily and I closed up the office, she turned to me, her eyes filled with pride. "Mom, we did it. We really turned everything around." "Yes, we did," I said, embracing her. "And the best part is, we did it together." Walking home, we felt a deep sense of contentment. The shadows of the past had faded, replaced by the light of our new beginnings. Jeremy and Megan's trials concluded with devastating sentences for both, their names forever tarnished. We had not only reclaimed our lives, but redefined them. Each step forward was a testament to our strength, proving that even amid life's worst storms, we could emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever came next. I took a deep breath, savoring the crisp morning air as I stepped out of my apartment. Everything was in its rightful place, meticulously organized to maintain the perfect harmony I craved. My briefcase was neatly packed, my outfit pressed to perfection, and not a single hair out of place. Order and control, that's what kept me grounded. As I made my way to the annual charity gala, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. These events were more than just an opportunity to give back. They were a chance to connect with like-minded individuals who valued structure and purpose as much as I did. The moment I stepped into the grand ballroom, I was greeted by a sea of familiar faces, all dressed to impress. My gaze was immediately drawn to a tall, well-groomed man across the room. Our eyes met, and I felt an instant connection, as if he too understood the importance of maintaining order amidst the chaos of life. "Excuse me," he said, approaching me with a warm smile. "I couldn't help but notice your poise and elegance. I'm Ben Hudson." "Lainey Watson," I replied, returning his smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you." We struck up a conversation, effortlessly flowing from topic to topic. Ben was a project manager at a prestigious firm, and his dedication to his work mirrored my own. We shared a passion for community service and a belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could make a profound difference. As the evening progressed, our connection deepened. Ben's charm and attentiveness captivated me, and I found myself drawn to his calm demeanor and unwavering focus. When he invited me to a family gathering the following weekend, I didn't hesitate to accept. Little did I know that this seemingly perfect encounter would be the catalyst for a whirlwind of events that would test the very foundations of my carefully curated life. The next Saturday, I arrived at Ben's sister's house, my heart fluttering with anticipation. As the door swung open, chaos erupted in the form of 3 rambunctious children, their giggles and shrieks piercing the once tranquil atmosphere. Ben's sister, Jill, greeted me with a harried smile, her hair disheveled and her clothes in disarray. "I'm so sorry about the mess," she apologized, ushering me inside. "The kids have been on a tear all day." I nodded politely, trying to maintain my composure as the children zipped past, trailing toys and crumbs in their wake. Ben emerged from the kitchen, his face betraying a hint of exhaustion. "Lainey, I'm glad you could make it," he said, planting a gentle kiss on my cheek. "Let me give you a tour of the house." As we navigated through the chaos, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The clutter and disarray grated against my very nature, and I found myself struggling to maintain my usual poise. Later that evening, as Ben and I sat on the rooftop garden overlooking the city, he took my hand in his. "Lainey, I know we've only known each other for a short time, but I feel a connection with you that I've never experienced before." He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Will you marry me and bring order to my life?" In that moment, I felt a surge of hope and excitement. Perhaps this was the key to finding the balance and tranquility I so desperately craved. I gazed into Ben's eyes, seeing the promise of a future filled with structure and stability. "Yes," I whispered, allowing him to slip the ring onto my finger. "I'll marry you." Little did I know that this decision would set in motion a series of events that would shatter my illusions of a perfectly ordered life, testing the limits of my resilience and determination. Moving into our new house should have been an exciting milestone, but it quickly became a source of tension between Ben and me. As I unpacked box after box, meticulously arranging every item in its designated space, Ben lounged on the couch, oblivious to the chaos surrounding us. "Ben, don't you think you should help with the unpacking?" I asked, trying to keep my frustration in check. He waved his hand dismissively. "Relax, babe. We've got all the time in the world." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this was just a temporary setback. Once we settled in, surely Ben would appreciate the importance of maintaining order in our home. But the weeks passed, and Ben's neglect only grew more apparent. He would leave his clothes strewn about, dishes piled in the sink, and clutter accumulating in every corner. My pleas for him to pitch in fell on deaf ears, and the tension between us mounted. To make matters worse, I was struggling with a personal battle of my own: infertility. Month after month, the negative pregnancy tests chipped away at my confidence, leaving me feeling inadequate and incomplete. "It's going to be okay, Lainey," the doctor reassured me during one of our appointments. "These things take time." But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, a void that no amount of organization could fill. Then, Jill and her kids started dropping by unannounced, their chaotic presence disrupting the fragile balance I had fought so hard to maintain. Within minutes of their arrival, the house would transform into a war zone, toys scattered everywhere, and the shrill cries of the children piercing the air. "Jill, can't you control your kids?" I snapped one day, my patience wearing thin. She fixed me with a cold stare. "They're just being kids, Lainey. Lighten up." Ben, ever the peacekeeper, sided with his sister. "Come on, Lainey. They're not hurting anyone." I wanted to scream, to make them understand the turmoil their disregard for order was causing me. But instead, I bottled it up, retreating to my meticulously arranged bedroom for solace. The tipping point came when Jill dropped her kids off for an entire day without warning. Ben had already left for work, leaving me to fend for myself against the onslaught of chaos. "Aunt Lainey, we're hungry," Max whined, tugging at my sleeve. "Hold on, I'll make you something," I said, trying to maintain my composure. But as I turned to head to the kitchen, a crash echoed from the living room. My heart sank as I rushed in to find my prized porcelain figurine collection shattered on the floor, the remnants scattered among the toys and debris. Tears stung my eyes as I surveyed the destruction. This was the final straw. When Ben returned home, I confronted him and Jill, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Look what your kids did," I shouted, gesturing to the shattered figurines. Jill scoffed. "It was just an accident, Lainey. Get over it." Ben stepped between us, his expression apologetic. "Lainey, you're overreacting. They're just kids." In that moment, I realized that no matter how hard I tried, Ben would never truly understand the importance of order and stability to me. His loyalty to his sister and her chaotic brood would always come first. As I stared at the shattered pieces on the floor, a part of me shattered too. The illusion of the perfect life I had envisioned with Ben. The aftermath of the porcelain figurine incident was like a dark cloud looming over our household. Ben tried to smooth things over, but the rift between us had grown too wide. "Lainey, it was just an accident," he pleaded. "You know Jill didn't mean for that to happen." I shook my head, my jaw clenched. "That's not the point, Ben. Your sister and her kids have no respect for our home or our boundaries." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'll talk to her, okay? It won't happen again." But his empty promises did little to reassure me. I knew deep down that Jill's chaos would continue to infiltrate our lives, and Ben would do nothing to stop it. Sure enough, a few weeks later, Jill showed up at our doorstep with her kids in tow, a frazzled look on her face. "Ben, I need you to watch the kids for a few hours," she said, ushering them inside before either of us could protest. I shot Ben a look, but he just shrugged helplessly. "It's only for a couple of hours, Lainey. We can handle it." Famous last words. Within minutes, the house was in disarray. Max and Tommy were engaged in a fierce battle with Nerf guns, launching foam darts in every direction. Lily, the youngest, was smearing peanut butter and jelly all over the couch, giggling gleefully. "That's it," I snapped, my patience reaching its limit. "Jill, you need to get your kids under control or leave." Jill whirled around, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me, they're just having fun, Lainey. You need to loosen up." Ben, ever the mediator, tried to calm the situation. "Ladies, let's not fight, Jill. Maybe it's best if you take the kids home for now." But Jill wasn't having it. She planted her hands on her hips defiantly. "No way, Ben. You said you'd watch them, and that's what you're going to do." I could feel my blood boiling as I watched Ben shrink under his sister's glare. He was supposed to be my partner, my rock, but instead he was letting Jill walk all over us. "Fine," I spat, grabbing my purse. "If you're not going to stand up to her, then I'm leaving." As I stormed out the door, I could hear Ben calling after me, but I didn't stop. I needed to get away from the chaos, even if just for a little while. I ended up at Hannah's place, my best friend since college. She took one look at my face and ushered me inside. "Lainey, what happened?" she asked, concern etched on her features. I told her everything, the constant disrespect from Jill, the destruction in our home, and Ben's unwillingness to stand up for me. Hannah shook her head in disbelief. "That's not right, Lainey. You shouldn't have to put up with that kind of treatment in your own home." Her words resonated with me, validating the frustration I had been bottling up for months. I was so caught up in trying to maintain order that I had lost sight of what truly mattered, being respected and supported by my partner. When I returned home later that evening, Ben was waiting for me in the living room, the chaos miraculously contained. "Lainey, we need to talk," he said, his expression grave. I braced myself, sensing that whatever he was about to say would change the course of our lives forever. "Jill and the kids, they're going to be staying with us for a while." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I opened my mouth to protest, but Ben held up his hand. I know. But Jill's going through a tough time right now, and she needs our support." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything Jill had put us through, Ben was inviting more chaos into our lives and expecting me to just accept it. "No," I said firmly, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Absolutely not." Ben's eyes widened in surprise. "Lainey, come on. They're family." "And what about me, Ben?" I shot back. "Don't I count as family too?" He fell silent, unable to meet my gaze. In that moment, I realized that no matter how much I loved him, Ben would never truly prioritize my needs over his sister's. The illusion of the perfect life I had envisioned for us had well and truly shattered. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Ben's announcement about Jill and her kids moving in had pushed me to my breaking point. "This is unacceptable, Ben," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I will not subject myself to that kind of chaos and disrespect in my own home." Ben's eyes widened in disbelief. "Lainey, come on. They're family. We have to help them out." "At what cost?" I shot back. "Your sister has shown zero regard for our boundaries or our sanity, and you just enable her behavior by letting her walk all over us." Jill, who had been hovering nearby, scoffed loudly. "Wow, Lainey, way to be a team player." I whirled on her, my patience completely shattered. "Don't you dare talk to me about being a team player, Jill. You and your kids have done nothing but wreak havoc in our lives." Ben stepped between us, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Ladies, please, let's not fight. Jill, why don't you take the kids to the other room for a bit?" Jill shot me a venomous glare but complied, herding her children out of the room. As soon as she was gone, I turned to Ben, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and determination. "I can't do this anymore, Ben," I said, my voice trembling. "You've made it clear that your loyalty lies with your sister, no matter how much chaos she brings into our lives." Ben's eyes widened in panic. Lainey, no. That's not true. You're my wife and I love you. I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of clarity wash over me. If that were true, you would have stood up for me. You would have put your foot down and told Jill that enough was enough. He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. I've tried so hard to make this work, Ben. I've compromised and sacrificed, all in the hopes of finding some semblance of peace and order. But it's clear that's never going to happen as long as Jill and her kids are in the picture. With a heavy heart, I turned and headed towards the bedroom, grabbing a suitcase from the closet and beginning to pack my belongings. Ben followed me, his eyes wide with panic. Lainey, what are you doing? I'm leaving, Ben, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging within me. I can't live like this anymore. He grabbed my arm, desperation etched on his face. Please, Lainey, don't do this. We can work it out, I promise. I gently pried his hand off, shaking my head. You've had countless chances to make things right, Ben, but you've chosen Jill and her chaos over me, time and time again. As I finished packing my suitcase, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. For too long I had been suffocating under the weight of chaos and disrespect, desperately clinging to the illusion of the perfect life I had envisioned. But now that illusion had shattered, and I was finally free. I called Hannah, my voice steady despite the tears that threatened to spill over. Hey, it's me. Can I stay with you for a bit? Once she had agreed, I turned to Ben, who was watching me with a devastated expression. I'll be staying with Hannah for now, I said, my tone firm. And I'll be hiring a moving company to come and collect the rest of my belongings, the ones I paid for. Ben's eyes widened in shock. Lainey, please don't do this. We can work it out, I swear. But I had made up my mind. The illusion of the perfect life had shattered, and it was time for me to move on. Goodbye, Ben, I said, my voice heavy with finality. I hope you and Jill are happy together. With those words, I turned and walked out the door, leaving behind the chaos and heartbreak that had once threatened to consume me. A new chapter was beginning, and this time, I was in control. The weight that had been crushing me for so long finally lifted as I stepped into my new apartment. It was smaller than the house I had shared with Ben, but it felt like a sanctuary, a place where I could breathe freely without the constant threat of chaos looming. Hannah had been an absolute rock throughout the entire ordeal, offering her unwavering support and a listening ear whenever I needed it. I'm so proud of you, Lainey, she said as we unpacked the last of my boxes. It took a lot of courage to walk away from that toxic situation. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. Thanks, Han. I couldn't have done it without you. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding my life and rediscovering the parts of myself that had been lost in the chaos of my marriage. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the structure and order of my auditing job. My colleagues noticed the change in me almost immediately. You seem different, Lainey. Lisa, a close friend from the office, remarked one day. More confident somehow. I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. I finally got rid of the baggage that was weighing me down. As I thrived in my newfound freedom, Ben's life seemed to be spiraling in the opposite direction. Jill's presence in his home had only amplified the chaos, and his work began to suffer as a result. Ben, we need to talk, his boss said, summoning him into his office one day. Your performance has been slipping lately, and it's starting to affect the entire team. Ben ran a hand through his hair, his expression weary. I know, sir. It's been a rough few months at home, and it's been hard to focus. His boss shook his head, his expression stern. I understand that personal issues can be difficult, but they can't be allowed to interfere with your work. If this continues, I'll have no choice but to let you go. Ben nodded, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I understand. I'll get it together, I promise. But no matter how hard he tried, the chaos at home only seemed to intensify. Jill's kids were constantly breaking things, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. And Jill herself did little to rein them in, content to let Ben shoulder the burden of cleaning up their messes. One particularly bad incident occurred when Ben was running late for work. He had just stepped out of the shower when he heard a crash from the living room, followed by Lily's shrill cries. Rushing out, he found his prized collection of antique vases shattered on the floor, the remnants scattered among the toys and debris that seemed to litter every surface. "What happened?" he demanded, his heart sinking at the sight of the destruction. Jill, who had been lounging on the couch, barely looked up from her phone. "The kids were playing, and they knocked over one of your ugly vases. No big deal." Ben's jaw clenched, a wave of anger washing over him. This was the final straw. "Get out," he said, his voice trembling with barely contained fury. Jill's head snapped up, her eyes widening in surprise. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Ben said, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "Get your kids and get out of my house. I can't take this chaos anymore." For a moment, Jill looked like she might protest. But then, something in Ben's expression must have given her pause. She gathered her kids and their belongings, shooting Ben a venomous glare as she stormed out the door. As the door slammed shut behind her, Ben sank to the floor, surrounded by the shattered remnants of his once prized collection. It was a harsh reminder of the price he had paid for enabling Jill's chaos. A price that had cost him his marriage, his sanity, and now his most cherished possessions. As I settled into my new life, thriving in the peace and order I had fought so hard to reclaim, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. The universe had a way of balancing things out, and it seemed that karma had finally caught up with Ben and Jill. Little did I know, however, that the true reckoning was still to come. The months following my departure from Ben's life were some of the most peaceful and fulfilling I had experienced in years. I threw myself into my work, relishing the structure and order that had been sorely lacking in my marriage. My boss took notice of my renewed dedication and focus, rewarding me with a prestigious promotion that came with a significant pay raise. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly appreciated and valued for my contributions. "Congratulations, Lainey," Lisa said, giving me a warm hug. "You've worked so hard for this. You deserve it." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride and accomplishment. This was the life I had always envisioned for myself, one of stability, success, and most importantly, peace. Little did I know, however, that the calm before the storm was about to come to an abrupt end. It was a crisp autumn evening when my phone rang, the caller ID displaying a number I hadn't seen in months, Ben's. My heart skipped a beat as I debated whether or not to answer. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "Hello?" "Lainey?" Ben's voice crackled through the line, laced with desperation. "It's me. I need your help." I steeled myself, determined not to let his pleas sway me. "What do you want, Ben?" There was a pause, as if he was struggling to find the words. "I made a mistake, Lainey. A huge mistake. Jill and her kids, they've ruined my life." I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction at the admission. After all, hadn't I warned him time and time again about the chaos they would bring? "I lost my job," he continued, his voice thick with emotion, "and then Jill left, taking the kids with her, but not before they destroyed almost everything I owned." I could picture the scene vividly. Ben, surrounded by the wreckage of his once pristine home, a victim of his own choices. "I'm sorry, Ben," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "but this is the bed you made for yourself. You chose Jill and her chaos over me, time and time again." "I know," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "And I was wrong. So wrong. Lainey, I'm begging you, please, come back. Give me another chance." I felt a flicker of pity for the man I had once loved, now reduced to such a pitiful state. But it wasn't enough to sway me. "I can't, Ben," I said firmly. "Too much has happened. I've built a life for myself, a peaceful, orderly life, free from the chaos that nearly consumed me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, punctuated only by the sound of Ben's ragged breathing. "I understand," he finally said, his voice heavy with defeat. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything." With that, the line went dead, and I was left staring at my phone, a strange mixture of emotions swirling within me. In the days that followed, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Ben had finally faced the consequences of his actions, and while a part of me still cared for him, I knew that returning to that life would only lead me down a path of misery once more. As for me, my life continued on an upward trajectory. My hard work and dedication paid off in spades, earning me a coveted spot in a prestigious certification program that would open even more doors for my career. On the day of my first class, I stood before my new classmates, a sense of pride and accomplishment welling up within me. Hello, everyone, I began, my voice confident and steady. My name is Lainey Watson, and I'm here to. As I spoke, I couldn't help but marvel at how far I had come, from a woman trapped in a cyclone of chaos to a strong, independent force to be reckoned with. The illusions of my past life had been shattered, but in their place, a new reality had taken shape, one in which I was the master of my own destiny. And as I looked out at the eager faces before me, I knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would take me to heights I had never dreamed possible. The weeks following Ben's desperate plea were a whirlwind of activity and growth. Not only had I successfully completed the prestigious certification program, but I had also caught the attention of a former colleague, Chris Turner. "Lainey, it's been too long," he said when we met for coffee one afternoon. "I've been keeping tabs on your career, and I have to say, I'm impressed." I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at his words. Chris had been a mentor of sorts to me early in my career, and his approval meant a great deal. "Thank you, Chris," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. "It hasn't been an easy road, but I'm finally in a place where I can truly thrive." He nodded, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "I've heard whispers about your personal life, too, about how you had the strength to walk away from a toxic situation." I tensed slightly, not expecting him to bring up my failed marriage, but Chris quickly put me at ease. "Don't worry, I'm not here to pry," he said, holding up a hand. "I just wanted to say that I admire your resilience. Not many people would have had the courage to do what you did." I felt a rush of gratitude for his understanding, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the need to shy away from the subject of my past. It wasn't easy, I admitted, but I knew that if I didn't walk away, the chaos would have consumed me entirely. Chris nodded sagely. "Well, I'm glad you found the strength to break free, and that's actually why I wanted to meet with you today." He leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "Lainey, I have an opportunity for you, a chance to take your career to the next level, while also finding the fulfillment and purpose you've been searching for." I felt my heart rate quicken with anticipation. "I'm listening." Chris went on to explain that he had recently taken a leadership role at a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering women and helping them break free from toxic situations. And he wanted me to come on board as his right-hand woman, spearheading initiatives and mentoring others who found themselves in similar circumstances to the one I had escaped. It was an opportunity that spoke to me on a deep level. Not only would I be able to continue growing my career, but I would also have the chance to use my experiences to help others find the strength and resilience they needed to take control of their lives. Without hesitation, I accepted Chris's offer. The following Monday, I strode into the nonprofit's sleek office, a sense of purpose and determination propelling me forward. As I made my way to the conference room for our first team meeting, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride and accomplishment. I had come so far from the woman I once was, the one who had allowed chaos and disrespect to dictate her life. Now I was a beacon of strength and resilience, ready to inspire and empower others to break free from their own shackles. As I stepped up to the podium and looked out at the eager faces of my new team, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice confident and assured. "My name is Lainey Watson, and I'm here to share with you the story of how I shattered the illusions that were holding me back, and how you can do the same." As I spoke, weaving the tale of my journey from chaos to clarity, I couldn't help but steal a glance out the window. And there, in the distance, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. Ben, disheveled and defeated, watching from afar as I commanded the room with a poise and confidence he had never seen in me before. In that moment, I knew that the tables had truly turned. The power dynamics that had once ruled our relationship had been flipped on their heads, and I was the one in control now. It was a bittersweet realization, but one that filled me with a sense of pride and accomplishment. I had come full circle, emerging from the wreckage of my past, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And as I continued to share my story, inspiring others to find their own strength and courage, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one in which I would never again allow chaos or disrespect to dictate the course of my life. The months that followed my new career with Chris's organization were a whirlwind of growth and empowerment, both personally and professionally. With my newfound confidence and clarity of purpose, I was able to embrace my passion for helping others wholeheartedly. However, I will not recount those experiences in detail here, as they would only repeat the sentiments I have expressed previously. Suffice to say, I found great fulfillment in using my story to inspire others facing similar challenges. Instead, I will simply express my deep gratitude for the opportunity to share my journey. It has been a humbling and empowering experience to reflect on how far I have come, both as an individual and as a professional. As I look ahead to the future, I feel a renewed sense of purpose and determination. My goal remains the same, to continue empowering others and spreading a message of resilience, perseverance, and self-acceptance. I am thankful for the support system that has allowed me to grow and develop these skills, and I am eager to pay that support forward. I hope my experiences can serve as a reminder that no matter how challenging life may seem, there is always the potential for growth, healing, and positive transformation. While the path ahead may bring new challenges, I am equipped with the tools and resilience to face them head-on. With ongoing dedication and perseverance, the possibilities for personal and collective growth are limitless. So I will continue to embrace this journey of learning, empowerment, and mentorship, inspired by the potential for positive impact that lies ahead. This is over. I'm done pretending, Sam declared coldly, tossing the car keys on the kitchen counter. What do you mean, Sam? I asked, my stomach churning. He looked at me with tired eyes. I've been seeing someone else for months now, Rachel. And by the way, happy birthday. My breath hitched. You're leaving me? On my birthday? Yeah, sorry about the timing, but it didn't seem like there was ever going to be a good time. Stunned, I sank into the nearest chair. Have you always been this heartless? Sam shrugged. I guess you just didn't see it before. The sharp sound of my heartbeat echoed in my ears. We had been married for 20 years. I had started school the next semester, worked as a school counselor to support us while Sam saved his dad's struggling auto repair shop. I never thought it would come to this. Who is she? I asked, barely managing to keep my voice steady. He hesitated. Naomi Reed. She came into the shop a lot. Things just happened. The words cut deep. Naomi. I had heard her name before in passing, never suspecting anything. I had even suggested that Sam give her some discounts to win her as a loyal customer. Does she know about me? About us? I asked, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. Sam shook his head. Not really. I haven't told her much. So I'm just supposed to pick up the pieces while you run off with someone who doesn't even know the real you? I asked, standing up to face him. Haven't I supported you enough, Sam? I held on when the business was struggling. I believed in you when no one else did. He sighed deeply, looking somewhat uncomfortable but still resolute. I know, Rachel, but that was then. This is now. I've changed, and I need something different. I could feel the walls closing in on me. Everything we had built together was crumbling right before my eyes. So what now? You just walk out the door? Yeah, that's the plan. Sam said, I'm moving in with Naomi. I'll be back to pick up my stuff, but for now, I've got to go. Don't bother, I spat. I'll pack your things for you. You can collect them when I'm not here. You don't have to make this harder than it needs to be, he replied coolly. I clenched my fists. You've already made it as hard as it could be. Sam lingered for a moment, as if he would say something more, but eventually he just turned and walked out, leaving the door ajar. I stood there, the room now eerily silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. As I slumped back into the chair, the cold realization set in. My life had changed within moments. Tomorrow was my 45th birthday, and instead of celebrating, I would be reeling from this devastating blow. But right now, I could only think of one thing: how to face tomorrow when everything had been shattered today. I guess this is where I start over, I whispered to the empty room. But starting over wasn't going to be as simple as those words. It was going to be an uphill battle, one I never expected to fight. And unbeknownst to Sam, I wasn't someone who would go down without a fight. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen the next morning, but it did little to soothe the heavy feeling in my chest. My phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. Happy birthday. Brunch at Sally's Diner? Without thinking, I replied, Be there in 20. At Sally's, Lisa took one look at me and knew something was wrong. Rachel, what's happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Sam left me, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. He's been seeing someone else. Lisa's face hardened with anger. What? That bastard. On your birthday? I nodded. 30 minutes before midnight. Her name's Naomi, some customer from the shop. Lisa reached out, squeezing my hand. You don't deserve this, after everything you've done for him. The waiter came and Lisa ordered pancakes. I settled for coffee, unable to think about food. As we waited, my mind drifted to our earlier years. Sam and I had met in college. He was charming, driven, always talking about taking over his dad's shop and turning it into something big. After college, I became a school counselor. Sam struggled with the auto shop, but I believed in him. We poured everything into that business. Long nights, missed weekends, vacations we never took. And now... this? Lisa snapped me out of my thoughts. Remember when you guys first opened? You were so excited. We all came to support you. That's why it's so unfair. I sighed. Yeah, those were good times. Now he wants a different life. You don't need him, Rachel. Look at your career. The kids at school adore you. You can get through this. Just then, my phone vibrated. A message from Sam. I'm picking up my stuff tonight. I showed the message to Lisa. She set her jaw. You're not going to be home, are you? No. I'll pack his bags and leave them in the garage. Lisa took a sip of her coffee. Good. Let him see what it feels like to be alone when he gets there. Later, at home, I threw Sam's clothes into suitcases. I found some photos of us shoved in drawers, taken during happier days. I paused, thumbed through them, then shoved them into the bag too. As I closed the last suitcase, my eyes landed on an old anniversary card from Sam. It read, "To many more years together." I tossed it into the trash. Just as I was finishing up, a voice startled me. Rachel? Alex, one of the employees from Sam's shop, stood there looking hesitant. I heard about you and Sam, wanted to check on you. Surprised, I made an effort to smile. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. His face turned serious. Listen, if you need anything, let me know. The guys at the shop aren't happy about this either. Sam hasn't been himself. We all have your back. Thank you, Alex. It means more than you know. As he left, I felt a glimmer of the support I would need to get through this. Sam might be done with me, but I wasn't alone. Tonight marked an end to what my life had been, but also a painful beginning of what it could become. Deep down, a spark of resolve ignited. Whatever Sam had planned with Naomi, he was going to regret underestimating me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. A few days passed, filled with silence and emptiness. The house felt like a stranger to me, every corner a reminder of what used to be. One morning, unable to bear the stillness, I decided to confront Sam. I drove to the shop, my heart pounding in my chest. I found him in the office, sorting through some papers. We need to talk, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. He barely looked up. What now, Rachel? Who's Naomi, and why her? I demanded, stepping closer. Sam sighed, exasperated. I don't owe you an explanation. But fine, she's someone who actually believes in me. She supports my dreams, unlike you. Supports your dreams? I've been there for every single one, Sam. I believed in you when no one else did, I shot back, feeling the sting of betrayal all over again. Yeah, but you just don't get it, Rachel. You're always busy with your job, your students. Naomi's different. She gets me, he said, leaning back. She gets you, or she gets your money? I wonder what she'd think if she knew you're still struggling with the shop, I retorted. Sam's eyes flashed with anger. Shut up, Rachel. That's none of your business. Just then, the door clicked open and Alex walked in. He froze upon seeing us. Sorry, didn't know you two were in here. It's fine, Alex, I said quickly. I was just leaving. But Alex stayed. You okay, Rachel? I looked at him, grateful for the concern. I will be. Thanks. Walking out of the shop, I couldn't shake the anger boiling inside me. Sam hadn't just betrayed me. He was trying to rewrite the past, to paint me as the unsupportive wife. Something snapped inside me. This wasn't just going to end with him leaving. He had to face the consequences. That evening, Lisa came over. We sat in the living room, the tension hanging heavy in the air. I talked to Sam today, I started. He's really convinced himself I'm the bad guy. Lisa sighed. Typical. He's deflecting his guilt onto you. What did you say? I told him Naomi probably didn't know he's broke. It pissed him off, I said, a small smile forming. Lisa leaned forward. Good, let's make sure she finds out. What's your plan? I hesitated but knew I needed her. I want to gather proof of his deceit. I want everyone to see who he really is. Can you help? Of course, we need to be smart about this. Collect everything, emails, texts, anything that shows what he's been doing. And we need to make sure his precious Naomi's roped in, Lisa suggested. The next few days I threw myself into the plan. I tracked down old messages, receipts, and anything I could find that painted the real picture. Lisa was my rock, always there with a word of encouragement or a new idea. One evening, as I was going through some bank statements, I found several large withdrawals labeled amenities. I knew Sam hadn't been transparent about finances, but this was blatant misuse. I called Lisa immediately. Found something. He's been withdrawing large amounts, probably spending on Naomi. Lisa's voice crackled through the phone. Perfect. We'll use that. Keep digging. The web of lies Sam had spun was more intricate than I'd imagined. But with every piece of evidence, my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making sure he couldn't do this to anyone else. By the time Sam would realize what was happening, it would be too late. He would regret every lie, every betrayal. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The weight of Sam's betrayal pressed heavily, but it also fueled a burning determination within me. One afternoon, I met Lisa at our usual spot, a cozy coffee shop downtown. I've had enough of feeling helpless, I said, my hands trembling slightly as I held my cup. It's time we do something about this. Lisa nodded, her eyes fierce. What do you have in mind? We gather more evidence, I replied. But not just that. We need to hit him where it hurts the most. His reputation and that shop. Everything he's worked for. Lisa leaned in. Let's start with his customers. They need to know what kind of man he really is. A few days later, armed with a plan, we started contacting some of Sam's most trusted customers. Each conversation was careful, under the guise of checking in and subtly probing about their experiences at the shop. Hey, David, I greeted one of the key customers, a longtime family friend. It's Rachel. I wanted to ask how things have been with the shop lately. David hesitated. Honestly, Rachel, things haven't been great. Service has gone downhill, and I've been thinking about taking my business elsewhere. Would you be willing to talk about it? I asked. I'm trying to understand more about what's going on. After a pause, he agreed. Sure, Rachel. For you, I will. We met David at a local diner. The frustration was evident on his face. Sam used to be reliable, but now it's like he's just going through the motions. I've had to bring my car back several times for the same issue. That's exactly what I was afraid of, I said, taking notes. Do you know if others are having the same problems? David nodded. I've heard similar complaints. People are getting fed up. We spent the next several days gathering similar testimonials, each story adding to the growing picture of Sam's negligence and deceit. Customers felt betrayed, much like I did. Documenting their stories gave me a solid foundation. Next, I needed to craft how this information would be revealed. Social media seemed like the perfect conduit. Lisa helped me set up discrete accounts where we could carefully leak the information, ensuring it appeared as community concerns, rather than personal vengeance. One evening, sitting in front of my laptop, I hesitated. Do you think this is too much? I asked Lisa, doubt creeping in. Lisa looked at me steadily. Rachel, he deserves to be exposed. This isn't just about revenge, it's about truth. People have a right to know who he really is. Taking a deep breath, I clicked post, sharing our first detailed account of a customer's experience. The response was immediate. Likes, shares, and comments from people in the community who had either suspected or experienced similar issues flooded in. The momentum was building. We also began planning a community meeting under the guise of supporting local businesses. With Lisa's connections and my resolve, we secured a venue and spread the word. The night before the meeting, I looked around the nearly empty house, bags of Sam's belongings still stacked in the garage. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and setting things right for everyone he had wronged. As we finalized our plans, Lisa squeezed my shoulder. You got this, Rachel. Tomorrow he'll finally face the consequences. I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Sam had underestimated me, but he wouldn't be able to anymore. This was the calm before the storm. Tomorrow, everything would change. The day of the community meeting arrived. I could feel the tension in my stomach, but I reminded myself of why I was doing this. In the end, it wasn't just about me. It was about revealing the truth. Lisa and I set up the meeting hall with care. We arranged chairs, set up a small stage, and made sure everything was ready. People started trickling in, curious and concerned. I spotted David and some of the other customers we'd spoken to. Each one gave me a reassuring nod, letting me know they were there for the same reason. Lisa approached with a clipboard in hand. "We're about ready to start. You good?" I took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's do this." The room quieted as Lisa took the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're here tonight to discuss some important issues affecting our local businesses, particularly Sam's auto repair shop." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the room. Lisa continued, "Rachel can tell you more. She has a unique perspective on this." I stepped onto the stage, my hands trembling slightly. "Thank you. Many of you know me as Sam's wife. I'm here not to air dirty laundry, but to share truths that affect all of us." I began to lay out the evidence we had gathered. Testimonials from customers, financial discrepancies, stories of negligence. Each piece of information was met with gasps and looks of shock. I saw anger and disappointment replace curiosity on the faces of those listening. One customer, Alex, stood up. "I worked at that shop for years. I started noticing things too. Sam wasn't the man we thought he was." Another voice chimed in. "He overcharged me for repairs that didn't fix anything. I kept going back, thinking it was just a rough patch." I felt the tide turning. Sam's once solid reputation was crumbling before my eyes. Just then, the doors flung open and Sam himself walked in, eyes blazing with fury. "What the hell's going on here?" he demanded, storming up to the front. "We're having a community meeting," I said calmly, facing him. "Really? Feels more like a witch hunt," Sam sneered. "Dragging my name through the mud won't fix your problems, Rachel." David stood up. "This isn't just about Rachel. This is about all of us. We trusted you, Sam, and you betrayed that trust." Sam's face turned red. "Betrayed? I did the best I could. If you weren't happy, you should have taken your business elsewhere." Lisa stepped in. "That's not the point, Sam. The point is you misled people. You took advantage of their trust." Naomi appeared behind Sam, looking confused. "Sam, what's going on?" He turned to her with a mix of desperation and anger. "Don't listen to them, Naomi. They're just trying to tear me down." But Naomi's expression changed as the realization dawned. "Is it true, everything they're saying?" Sam hesitated for a moment too long. Naomi's eyes filled with betrayal. "I can't believe I trusted you," she whispered, stepping away from him. The crowd murmured in agreement. Sam's world was collapsing around him. He tried to regain control, but it was too late. The community had seen through the facade, and the truth was out. As people started to leave, I felt a sense of release. It was done. Sam sat in stunned silence as I walked away with Lisa, feeling the weight of a hard-earned victory. "That was brave," Lisa said softly. "Yeah," I replied, glancing back at the wreckage we left behind. But it was necessary. We walked out into the cool night air, ready for whatever came next. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like I was on the right path. The day after the meeting, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls, messages, and emails poured in from people in the community who had been swindled by Sam. The story of his deceit spread like wildfire. Every message strengthened my resolve. Later that evening, I sat at the kitchen table when Lisa called. "Rachel, have you seen the news?" "No." "Why?" "They're talking about Sam's shop. It's all over local news. Reporters are picking up the story." The tables had truly turned. I contacted Alex and other former employees to see if they were willing to talk to the media. Almost all agreed. People were eager to share their experiences. The next day, a local news crew came to interview me. I put on my bravest face as the camera started rolling. "Why did you decide to come forward?" the reporter asked. I took a deep breath. People deserve to know the truth. Sam built his business on trust, and he broke that trust. Alex was interviewed next. He shared how he had seen Sam's work ethic decline and his manipulation grow. The more stories that aired, the worse things got for Sam. The fallout was immediate. Customers started canceling appointments. Online reviews bombarded with negative feedback. Naomi didn't stay silent either. She took to social media to share her side of the story, exposing even more of Sam's lies. That evening, I was at home when there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Sam standing there, his eyes bloodshot and face haggard. "What do you want, Sam?" I asked, keeping my voice cold. "I need to talk to you," he pleaded. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, letting him enter, curious about what he had to say. He sat down heavily at the dining table. "You've ruined everything, Rachel," he started, his voice breaking. "The shop, my life, everything." "No, Sam," I snapped. "You did that all by yourself. You deceived your customers. You lied to that woman and betrayed me." He put his head in his hands, looking defeated. "I know I messed up, but can't you stop this? Can't we work something out?" I crossed my arms, glaring at him. "Why should I? After everything you've done, you expect me to bail you out?" I just need a way to fix this," he stammered, looking desperate. "It's too late, Sam. Everyone knows the truth now. Nothing you say can undo the damage you've caused." He stood up abruptly, anger bubbling to the surface. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? You're glad to see me fall." I met his eyes, unflinching. "No, Sam. I take no joy in any of this. But you need to face the consequences of your actions. Maybe this will teach you a lesson." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I watched him go, feeling a mix of triumph and sadness. It hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. The story continued to unravel in the days that followed. Sam's shop had to close, unable to survive the backlash. Financial ruin followed him quickly, and soon he became a pariah in the community. In the midst of the chaos, I found a sense of peace. Justice had been served, and with it came a strange sense of closure. Sam might have lost everything, but I gained something much more valuable: my self-respect and the strength to move forward. As the dust settled, I realized that this was only the beginning of my new chapter, and for the first time in a long while, the future seemed bright. The news of Sam's downfall continued to spread. The shop stood desolate, its empty parking lot a stark reminder of what once was. One afternoon, I decided to drive by. Seeing it like that was oddly satisfying, like a chapter closing. As I parked my car, Alex emerged from the shop, a few other employees with him. "Rachel, you won't believe what just happened," he said, walking over quickly. "What is it?" I asked, intrigued. "Sam's finally decided to close the shop. He just gave us all our final checks," Alex explained, holding up an envelope. "Wow, I knew it was coming, but part of me didn't believe it until now," I said, shaking my head. "You did this, Rachel." "It's over because of you," Alex said, admiration in his eyes. I smiled, but I couldn't ignore the mix of emotions churning inside. "Thanks, Alex. What will you do now?" "We'll find something. The market's not great, but I've got some leads," he replied, looking hopeful. "Good luck with everything. You deserve better," I told him sincerely. As we said our goodbyes, another car pulled up. Naomi stepped out, a mix of anger and confusion on her face. "Rachel," she called, walking towards me. "Naomi," I greeted her, bracing for the confrontation. "I just wanted to say I'm leaving town. I can't stay here anymore," Naomi said, her voice breaking slightly. "I had no idea about any of this. I feel like such a fool." "You're not a fool, Naomi. Sam deceived you like he did everyone else," I assured her. Naomi sighed deeply. "I wish I had never met him, but thank you for revealing the truth." "Take care of yourself," I said, watching her walk away. Though she had been part of the betrayal, I couldn't help feeling a twinge of sympathy. As the days passed, I received updates on Sam's life. Word traveled fast in our small town. He struggled to find work, his reputation in ruins. People avoided him, whispers following wherever he went. One morning, while having coffee with Lisa, she shared a new development. "Ran into David yesterday. He mentioned Sam's applying for bankruptcy." "Wouldn't be surprised," I responded, sipping my coffee. "He has nowhere else to turn." "You've done what you needed to, Rachel. How do you feel now?" Lisa asked, her eyes searching mine. "Honestly, relieved, but I also feel pity for him. He brought this on himself, but it's still hard to see," I admitted. "The community's behind you. We all are," Lisa said, squeezing my hand. It was comforting to have such support, but I knew I couldn't dwell on Sam's downfall forever. I needed to move forward, one step at a time. Sitting at my desk at work, I felt the familiar rhythm of my day returning. Helping students, listening to their stories, offering guidance, it grounded me. There was a sense of purpose that had been missing during those turbulent weeks. Later that week, I set up a small gathering at a local cafe for women who had experienced betrayal. It wasn't much, just a few chairs pulled together, but it was a start. I wanted to create a space where we could share, heal, and move forward collectively. As we sat and talked, I could see the weight lifting off their shoulders, much like it had lifted off mine. This was my new beginning, a chance to turn pain into something positive, to help others navigate their own struggles. The evening ended with hugs and promises to meet again. I walked out, feeling lighter, more hopeful than I had in years. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was mine to shape. As I drove home, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had faced the storm, and now I was emerging into the clear, ready to embrace whatever came next. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was stronger than before, and nothing could take that away from me. Life started to settle into a new rhythm. The chaos of the past few months felt like a distant, albeit painful memory. One evening, while preparing dinner, I received an unexpected call. "Rachel, it's David." His voice sounded urgent. "Hi, David. What's up?" I asked, trying to mask my concern. "Have you heard about Sam?" He paused for a moment. "He's been going around town trying to get people to take him back in business." I sighed. "He's still trying to salvage something, huh?" "Yeah, but no one's biting. People have had enough of his lies," David explained. "Thanks for letting me know, David. I appreciate it." As I hung up, I realized how far I'd come. My life no longer revolved around Sam's actions. He was spiraling, and I was finally free from the turmoil he created. The next day at school, I found renewed purpose in my work. The students' faces, their stories, and their struggles, they grounded me. During lunch, I noticed Mrs. Thompson, the principal, approaching my desk. "Rachel, could we talk for a moment?" she asked. "Of course," I replied, following her to her office. She closed the door, her expression serious but kind. "I've seen a remarkable change in you these past few weeks. You've handled everything with such grace and strength." "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. It hasn't been easy," I admitted. "There's an opening for a senior counselor position. I think you'd be perfect for it," she said, a warm smile spreading across her face. I was taken aback. "Really? I'd love that opportunity." "Consider it done. You've earned it," she said, shaking my hand. "And Rachel, your support group idea has been wonderful. Keep up the good work." Feeling elated, I returned to my desk. This was a new beginning, a chance to focus on my career and the positive impact I could have. That evening, the support group met again. Among the women, there was an air of camaraderie. We shared stories, offered encouragement, and provided a shoulder to lean on. The sense of community was palpable. "Rachel, I can't thank you enough for starting this group," one of the women, Judy, said, her eyes welling up with tears. "It's made such a difference." "You're not alone, Judy. None of us are," I replied, feeling a sense of pride and purpose. After the meeting, Lisa and I sat outside the cafe, enjoying the cool evening breeze. "You did good, Rachel. This group is really making an impact," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I never thought I could turn something so painful into something so positive," I admitted. "Well, you did, and look at you now. Senior counselor, support group leader. You're thriving," Lisa said with a smile. As I drove home, I felt a surge of optimism. The darkness of the past had given way to a bright, promising future. A few days later, as I was organizing my new office, a familiar face walked in. It was Naomi. "Rachel, can we talk?" "Of course," I replied, motioning for her to sit. "I just wanted to say I'm leaving town for good, starting over somewhere new," she explained, her voice shaky. "I think that's a good idea," I said gently. "You deserve a fresh start." "Thank you for everything, and I'm sorry for my part in all this," she said, tearfully. We embraced briefly. It felt like a final closure, an ending to that chapter of our lives. Driving home that evening, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been tumultuous, but I emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever came next. My phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. "Wine night to celebrate your new job?" I smiled, replying quickly, "Absolutely." As I pulled into my driveway, I knew one thing for certain. The future was mine to shape, and I would face it with resilience and renewed hope. This was just the beginning of a new, brighter chapter. "Mitch, where the hell did $50,000 go?" I could hardly keep my voice steady. My heart pounded as I stood in our kitchen, glaring at Mitch, my husband of 25 years. He looked up from his newspaper, a dismissive smile playing on his lips. "Oh, that? Don't worry about it, Laura. It's handled," he replied. "Handled?" I echoed, incredulity raising my voice an octave. This is Jonathan's college fund we're talking about. Handled how? Mitch folded his newspaper with an exaggerated calmness, leaning back as though he had all the time in the world. I needed to make an investment. Something that could benefit us in the long run. An investment? I repeated, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. Mitch, this isn't your personal piggy bank. You didn't even discuss it with me. He shrugged, his nonchalance hitting me like a physical blow. I make the financial decisions in this house, Laura. You know that. I felt the tears of frustration welling up but forced them back. We've been saving that money for Jonathan for years. You can't just... I can, and I did. End of discussion. He reached for his coffee with the air of someone closing a tedious conversation. I took a deep breath, trying to find a hint of the man I'd fallen in love with decades ago. Mitch, why are you doing this? You know how important this is for Jonathan, for us. He finally met my gaze, his expression hardening. I'm doing what's best for this family, Laura. You just can't see it. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped back. This isn't just about the money, Mitch. It's about trust, respect. You've crossed a line. Oh, spare me the lecture, he said, scoffing. You think struggling to pay bills is respect? You think letting our son go to some second-rate college is trust? Jonathan deserves better, I exclaimed. We all do. What he deserves is a father who makes smart choices, Mitch retorted. Not a mother who's too emotional to understand financial realities. His words cut deep, and I felt a desperate need to escape this suffocating conversation. I grabbed my coat and keys in a fumbling rage. I'm going out. Fine, have fun sulking, he called after me as I slammed the door. The cold evening wind numbed my cheeks as I walked down the street aimlessly. My mind raced, heart aching with too many unresolved questions. How had it come to this? How had Mitch become someone I barely recognized? I reached for my phone and dialed Eve's number. She answered almost immediately, her familiar, warm voice a balm to my frayed nerves. Laura, what's wrong? Eve, I said, my voice cracking. Mitch took $50,000 from our savings. For some investment. He didn't even. $50,000? Are you serious? She interrupted, the shock evident in her tone. That's for Jonathan's college. I know, I said, the gravity of our situation pressing down on me again. I don't know what to do. Come over, she urged. We need to talk about this. You shouldn't be alone right now. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, feeling a small spark of relief. Okay, I'm on my way. As I walked to Eve's house, I knew that ignoring the problem would no longer work. Mitch's unilateral decision made me realize just how fractured our family had become. Something needed to change, and it needed to happen soon. I knocked on Eve's door, my hands trembling slightly. She opened it almost immediately and pulled me into a warm hug. Laura, come in. Let's sit and talk. We moved to her cozy living room, and she handed me a cup of tea. I took a sip, feeling the warmth spread through my body. Tell me everything, she urged, her eyes filled with concern. I took a deep breath. I found out this morning that Mitch withdrew $50,000 from our savings for some so-called investment. Eve's eyes widened. That's for Jonathan's college. How could he just take it without consulting you? I shook my head, frustration bubbling up again. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. He's been this way for years, Eve. It's just gotten worse. She leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. Laura, you need to start looking out for yourself. This isn't just about money. It's about respect and trust. I nodded, her words resonating deeply. You're right. I can't keep letting him control everything, but I don't even know where to start. Eve squeezed my hand. We'll figure it out. You're not alone in this. Just then, Jonathan walked in, his face lighting up when he saw me. Mom, you've been crying. What's wrong? I forced a smile, trying to keep my composure. It's just been a rough day, sweetie. He looked at Eve, then back at me. Is it Dad again? I sighed, realizing I couldn't shield him from the truth any longer. Yes, honey. Your dad took the money we saved for your college. Jonathan's eyes darkened with anger. What? How could he do that? That's my future he's messing with. Eve spoke up, her voice calm but determined. Jonathan, we're going to sort this out. Your mom and I have your back. Jonathan nodded, looking more resolved. I want to help, whatever it takes. Mitch's past actions began to flood my mind, the countless times he'd put himself first, manipulating situations to his benefit. There was the time he borrowed money from our emergency fund to buy expensive golf clubs, promising to pay it back, but never did. Or the countless nights he spent at the bar, using the family budget as his personal allowance. Looking at Eve and Jonathan, I felt a renewed sense of determination. We need to start planning. We can't let him keep doing this. Eve nodded. Agreed, and we need to gather evidence of his behavior. If it comes to a legal battle, you'll need proof. Jonathan pulled out his phone. I can keep track of what he's doing. If he's being sneaky, we'll catch him. Eve smiled. That's the spirit. Laura, start documenting everything. Each time he withdraws money, each manipulation, it all counts. I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. I'll start tonight, and I won't let him steal our future. That's the Laura I know, Eve said, squeezing my shoulder. We spent the next few hours talking, planning, sharing stories of Mitch's selfishness. By the time I left Eve's house, I felt lighter, more in control. Jonathan walked beside me, a silent pillar of support. As we reached home, I knew things were going to change. I was done being passive. Mitch might have started this war, but I was going to end it. The house was eerily quiet when I got home. Jonathan headed to his room, muttering something about homework. I heard the front door creak open and close, signaling Mitch's return. My stomach tightened. Laura, you home? He called out, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. I'm here, I replied, stepping out of the kitchen. I watched him hang up his jacket, the expensive leather one he'd bought without consulting me. Where did you disappear to? I came home to an empty house, he said, a note of accusation in his tone. I needed some time to think, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. I went to see Eve. Mitch rolled his eyes. Of course you did. Did you two have a nice little gossip session? We talked about a lot of things, I said calmly. Including the money you took from Jonathan's college fund, he scoffed. Still harping on about that. I told you it's an investment. And I told you it's not just about the money. It's about trust, I shot back, my voice firmer now. Mitch threw his hands up in exasperation. For God's sake, Laura, stop making a mountain out of a molehill. I'm taking care of the family, and all you do is nag. It's not nagging, Mitch. It's called being responsible, I said, the anger rising in me again. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You're always so high and mighty. Maybe if you'd let me handle things my way, we'd actually get somewhere. I took a step back, unwilling to engage in another pointless argument. I'm going to bed. We can talk about this tomorrow. As I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm, not roughly but enough to make my point clear. We're not done, Laura. Yes, we are, I said, pulling away and heading up the stairs. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and determination. The next morning, Jonathan found me packing a small suitcase. Mom, what are you doing? I looked up at him, resolved. We're leaving, Jonathan. I can't take his bullying anymore. His eyes widened, then set in determination. Okay, Mom. What do we need to do? We need to gather our essentials and some important documents, I explained, and we need to do it quietly. Jonathan nodded, quickly moving to help me. As we packed, I felt a strange sense of liberation washing over me. Mitch's grip on our lives was slipping. A few hours later, Mitch left the house with his golf clubs, no doubt heading for another indulgent afternoon. That was our chance. Mom, we deserve better than this. Let's get out before it's too late, Jonathan urged, his voice steady and reassuring. I looked at him, feeling an immense pride. You're right. Let's go. We packed our things into the car quietly, trying to be as discreet as possible. My heart raced with every minute, but the urgency pushed me forward. As I closed the trunk, I glanced at our house one last time, feeling a bittersweet mix of sorrow and relief. We drove to Eve's house, the silence between us thick with a shared understanding. This was the beginning of something new, something better. As we pulled into her driveway, Eve opened the door, her face lighting up with a welcoming smile. You've got us. Mitch has no idea what's coming for him, she said, ushering us inside. Sitting in Eve's warm, inviting home, I felt the weight of years lift from my shoulders. With Jonathan at my side and Eve's support, I was ready for whatever came next. Mitch had pushed us too far, and now it was our turn to fight back. Eve's living room felt like a safe haven as we sat down to plan our next steps. Peter joined us, his presence calming. He had always been a reliable and supportive figure, a stark contrast to Mitch's unpredictable volatility. Okay, Laura, Eve began, her tone serious but encouraging. "We need a game plan." I nodded, grateful for her steadfast support. "We need to gather enough evidence to expose Mitch, but we also need a clear escape plan. We can't stay here indefinitely." Peter spoke up, his voice even. "I've been thinking about that. Mitch loves controlling the narrative, but if we expose him with proof, he won't have a leg to stand on." Jonathan leaned forward, eager. "What kind of proof do we need?" Eve smiled at him, her eyes twinkling with determination. "Anything and everything. Financial records, emails, anything that shows his reckless spending and deceit." I sighed, thinking about the state of our finances. "I've got bank statements and transaction records. He's been careless, thinking I wouldn't notice." Peter nodded. "Good. We also need to catch him in the act. If he's planning something big, now's the time." I thought about Mitch's recent behavior, the way he had mentioned taking care of his parents. He's planning a vacation for his parents, probably with the stolen money. Eve's eyes widened. "Perfect. If we can prove he's using the college fund for that, it's game over for him." Jonathan looked at me, concern mixed with resolve. "Mom, what if he finds out what we're doing? He won't take this lying down." Eve smiled reassuringly. "You're with us now. Mitch won't touch you." I squeezed Jonathan's hand, meeting his gaze. "We're in this together, and we're not backing down." Peter handed me a small voice recorder. "This might come in handy if you need to record any conversations. It's a small step, but every bit counts." I took the recorder, feeling more empowered than I had in years. "Thank you, Peter. We'll make sure he doesn't see it coming." Our conversation shifted to logistics. Eve offered their spare room for as long as necessary, and Peter suggested consulting a lawyer who specialized in family law. Most importantly, we crafted a timeline for gathering evidence and taking action. Later that evening, as Jonathan and I settled into Eve's guest room, there was a sense of newfound hope. The walls were lined with photographs of happier times, a testament to the positive life we were stepping towards. "Mitch won't get away with this," Jonathan whispered, his voice resolute. I nodded, feeling the same determination. "We'll expose him for who he really is. This is just the beginning." The next few days were a blur of covert operations. We managed to secure more documents and even recorded a few suspicious phone calls Mitch had made. Evidence started to pile up, each piece a nail in the coffin of his deceit. On the 5th day, Peter burst into the living room, excitement evident. "Laura, I got some information. Mitch booked an extravagant trip to Hawaii for his parents. The payments went through yesterday." Eve grinned. "We've got him now?" My heart pounded with adrenaline. It's time to confront him, but first, we need to make sure we're protected. Peter nodded. "I'll set up a meeting with the lawyer. Once we have legal backing, Mitch won't be able to touch you." As dusk settled in, the plan became clearer. Armed with Eve and Peter's support and Jonathan's determination, I felt more unstoppable than ever. Mitch might have thought he could control our lives, but he was in for a rude awakening. The first battle had been fought in silence, but the next would be loud and undeniable. We had the proof. We had the plan. Now it was time for action. "Are you ready, Laura?" Eve asked quietly as we stood in the hallway, our bags packed. I nodded, my heart thumping in my chest. "Yes, it's time." Jonathan appeared, carrying his own bag. "Dad's out with her, isn't he?" he asked, his voice tight with anger. I nodded again, unable to shake the image of Mitch with his mistress, living freely while we planned our escape. "We have to move quickly." Eve guided us to the car parked discreetly in the back alley. "Let's get you out of here," she said softly, starting the engine. As we drove, the tension eased just a bit. We were leaving the toxic environment behind, but I knew this was only the beginning. Jonathan was silent beside me, his gaze fixed firmly out the window. We pulled into Eve's driveway, and Peter was there to help us unload. "You're safe here," he reassured us. "We'll take it one step at a time." Inside, the smell of freshly brewed coffee greeted us, and I let out a sigh of relief. We moved our bags into the guest room and gathered in the living room to make final plans. Eve handed me a cup of coffee. "So, what's the plan now?" "First, we need to contact the lawyer," I said, sipping the warm liquid. "We need everything ready before facing Mitch." Peter nodded. "I've already set up a meeting. We'll go there first thing tomorrow morning." Jonathan leaned forward, determination etched on his face. What if Dad comes looking for us? He'll be furious. Eve put a comforting hand on his shoulder. He won't hurt you, Jonathan. We'll make sure of it. And once we've confronted him with everything, he'll have no choice but to back down. The next morning, armed with folders of evidence, we headed to the lawyer's office. The meeting was intense but productive. Our lawyer, Mr. Jennings, was confident. This is more than enough to take legal action. Mitch won't have a leg to stand on. Back at Eve's house, preparations continued. Peter had gathered more information about Mitch's secret plans, and each piece fell perfectly into our puzzle. Jonathan and I were packing up for the day when Eve knocked softly on the door. "Can I come in?" "Of course," I said, trying to muster a smile. Eve sat beside me, her eyes filled with warmth. "Tomorrow's the big day. Are you ready?" "Ready as we'll ever be," I replied, squeezing her hand. Jonathan looked at us, his resolve unwavering. "Mom, we need to be strong. We can do this." I hugged him, feeling a surge of pride. "Yes, we can." The following morning, Mitch's face was a mask of confusion as he walked into our lawyer's office, only to see Jonathan and me sitting there. "Laura, what the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice full of rage. "This," I said, holding up the folder of documents, "is evidence of every lie, every theft, and every betrayal." "We're done, Mitch." He glanced at the papers, his face going pale. "You can't do this. You're nothing without me, Laura." I stood up, my voice unwavering. "You're wrong, Mitch. We're stronger than you ever thought possible. We're done being your victims." Mr. Jennings stepped in. "Mr. Clark, you will be served with divorce papers and a lawsuit for the unauthorized withdrawal of funds. I suggest you prepare." Mitch's fury was palpable. "You can't take my family away from me." Jonathan stepped forward, his voice cold. "You did that yourself, Dad. Now it's time for you to face the consequences." Leaving the office, I felt a sense of liberation. Mitch wouldn't control us any longer. As we drove back to Eve's, I turned to Jonathan. "We did it. We took our first real step to freedom." He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's just the beginning, Mom. We have a lot more to look forward to." As we arrived at Eve's, the sun breaking through the clouds felt like a sign. The worst was over, but the best was yet to come. We had reclaimed our lives, and now it was time to rebuild. Mitch's face twisted in anger as he stormed into Eve's house, his knuckles white from clutching the divorce papers. He had found us sooner than we anticipated. "You think you can just leave me and get away with this?" he shouted, eyes wild with fury. Eve stepped forward, blocking his way to me and Jonathan. "Calm down, Mitch. You've lost the right to make demands." "Out of my way, Eve," Mitch snarled, his voice low and threatening. "Laura, get over here. We're going home." I stood my ground, my pulse racing. "No, Mitch, we're not going anywhere with you." Jonathan came to my side, his expression defiant. "Dad, you need to leave. You're not scaring us anymore." Mitch looked between us, his face contorting in disbelief. "You've poisoned him against me," he spat, glaring at me. "You're tearing this family apart." Eve's husband, Peter, stepped out of the kitchen, his presence reassuring. "Mitch, you need to go. Laura and Jonathan are staying here, and there's nothing you can do about it." Mitch's hands shook, his eyes darting around the room. "You think you can hide behind them forever? This isn't over, Laura, not by a long shot." "Enough, Mitch," I said, my voice strong and unwavering. "You don't control us anymore. You've lied, stolen, and betrayed our trust. It's over. We're done." Eve moved to stand beside Peter, their united front a stark contrast to Mitch's isolated fury. "Get out, Mitch," Eve said calmly, "before we call the police." His face flushed with anger. Mitch took a step back. "This isn't the end. I'll make sure you regret this," he hissed before turning on his heel and storming out the door. The room fell silent, the tension slowly dissipating. Eve turned to me, her eyes soft with concern. "Are you okay?" I nodded, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Yes, we did it." We stood up to him. Jonathan wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "We've got each other now, Mom. That's what matters." Peter handed me a glass of water, his face kind. "You're safe here. Mitch won't hurt you." We settled back into the living room, the weight of the confrontation still hanging in the air. But as we talked, the mood shifted. We began to discuss practical steps for moving forward. Contacting Mitch's employer with evidence of his infidelity, freezing assets, and securing our new life. Eve looked at me with determination. "Laura, you've come so far. Now it's to take the final steps." We need to expose him, Jonathan said firmly. He can't keep getting away with this. I felt a surge of resolve. You're right, we'll go public if necessary. People need to see Mitch for who he really is. With a renewed sense of purpose, we spent the next few hours organizing our evidence, preparing for the next move. Jonathan worked diligently beside me, his commitment a source of strength. As the day turned to evening, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We were no longer living in fear. We were taking control, one step at a time. The phone rang, interrupting our thoughts. Peter answered, his expression shifting to one of concern. He handed the phone to me. It's Mitch. I hesitated, but took the phone, my voice steady. What do you want, Mitch? You think you've won? He snarled. This is far from over, Laura. You can't scare us anymore, I replied, my resolve unshaken. We have everything we need to expose you. It's your turn to face the consequences. I'll destroy you, he threatened. I'll make sure you lose everything. No, Mitch, you've already lost. It's time to let go. I hung up the phone, my heart steady. Eve placed a hand on my shoulder. You're stronger than you know, Laura. We're here with you. With my friends by my side and my son's unwavering support, I knew we would face whatever came next. This battle was far from over, but we were ready. The strength of our newly formed bond would see us through. I couldn't sleep that night. Mitch's parting words echoed in my mind, but every time fear crept in, I reminded myself how far we had come. The evidence we'd collected was powerful, and the lawyer assured us we had a strong case. The next morning, we convened in Eve's living room to finalize our next move. The air was thick with anticipation and determination. Peter sat with a laptop, documents spread out before him. Laura, he began, we have emails, financial records, photos, and even the recordings. It's time to make this public. Eve nodded in agreement. We'll release it all online, send notifications to his employer, and ensure the media catches wind. He won't be able to hide. Jonathan looked at me, determination in his eyes. Mom, are you ready for this? It's gonna get messy. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Yes, I'm ready. Let's do this. We spent hours compiling everything, creating a comprehensive file that laid bare Mitch's lies and deception. As we worked, the gravity of the situation became more real, but so did our resolve. Peter sent out the emails ensuring the information reached Mitch's employer and key media contacts. Then, with a final click, he posted the file online. It was public now, and there was no turning back. Now we wait, Eve said, her voice a mix of excitement and anxiety. It didn't take long for the backlash to begin. Mitch's phone started ringing off the hook, his colleagues likely calling in shock and disbelief. I watched as the first news article surfaced, detailing the scandal. Later that day, Mitch barged into the house again, his face a mask of fury. You think you can destroy me with lies? He shouted. These aren't lies, Mitch, I said, standing my ground. These are your actions, your choices. Now everyone knows. He stormed forward, pointing a trembling finger at me. You'll pay for this, Laura. You've ruined everything. No, Mitch, I replied calmly. You ruined everything. This is the consequence of your actions. Jonathan stepped between us, his eyes blazing with anger. Dad, leave. You're not welcome here. Mitch's eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with venom. You think you're the hero, Jonathan? You're just a pawn in her game. I choose to stand by my mom, Jonathan shot back, unwavering. Peter stepped beside us. You should go, Mitch. This is the last time you'll come here uninvited. The police will be called if you return. Mitch sneered, but finally turned away, his shoulders slumped. This isn't over, he muttered, leaving the house in a storm of rage. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Mitch's employer suspended him pending investigation. The media delved deeper into the scandal, and the court orders were swiftly put in place, freezing his assets. We watched as Mitch's life unraveled, his power slipping away. My phone buzzed with notifications of support from people who read our story, their words lifting a weight from my chest. It's working, Mom, Jonathan said, scrolling through the messages. People are on our side. Eve embraced me, her eyes shining. You did it, Laura. You took back your life. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. We did it, all of us. That night, as we sat around the dinner table, there was a lightness in the air. We laughed, shared stories, and began to imagine a future without Mitch's shadow looming over us. Peter raised his glass, a toast to our resilience, to new beginnings and a brighter future, he declared. We clinked our glasses, the sound a beautiful melody of hope and renewal. The battle had been tough, but we had emerged stronger, bound by love and unwavering support. As I looked around at Jonathan, Eve, and Peter, I knew this was the start of something wonderful. We had reclaimed our lives, and now we were finally free to live them to the fullest. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Mitch spiraled deeper into his misery. He lost his job, his reputation crumbling under the weight of the scandal. An official letter arrived, confirming his termination and the company's intent to press charges. "Mom, did you see this?" Jonathan handed me the letter, his eyes wide with surprise. I scanned the page, feeling a mixture of relief and sorrow. Yes, it's finally happening. Mitch is facing the consequences. Eve walked into the room, her expression a mix of pride and concern. "He did terrible things, Laura, but this must be hard for you too." I nodded, touched by her empathy. "It is, but it's also necessary. We can't keep living in fear." Meanwhile, Mitch's parents, who had always turned a blind eye to his faults, made their stance clear. They disowned him, returning our initial loan and issuing a public statement that further isolated Mitch. Eve read the statement out loud, her voice steady. "We are deeply saddened by our son's actions and cannot stand by him. We acknowledge the pain he has caused his family and take steps to rectify the situation." Peter joined us at the kitchen table, holding another document. "Laura, you're not going to believe this. Mitch's parents don't want anything to do with him. This means there's no more backing him up financially." As we processed everything, my phone buzzed. Notifications flooded in as our story continued to circulate. Messages of support poured in from people who had faced similar struggles, each one a small beacon of solidarity. "Look at this," Jonathan said, showing me a message from a woman who had found the courage to leave her own abusive relationship after reading our story. "We're making a difference, Mom." Tears welled up in my eyes. "I never thought sharing our pain would help others. It's incredible." Peter suggested, "Laura, you should consider public speaking or writing. Your story has the power to help so many people." Eve agreed. "You've got a gift, Laura. Use it to turn this pain into power." That evening, we sat down to plan the next chapter of our lives. Jonathan and I decided to move into a new apartment, a place that symbolized our fresh start. The process was smoother than I expected, made easier by the community rallied around us. On the day of our move, I stood in our new living room, boxes piled high, and breathed a deep sigh of relief. Jonathan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "This is it, Mom, our new beginning." I smiled at him, feeling a wave of contentment wash over me. "Yes, it is. We've earned this." Back at Eve's, the final pieces of our old life were packed away. "You're always welcome here," Eve said, tears glistening in her eyes. "We're family no matter what." "Thank you for everything," I whispered, hugging her tightly. "We couldn't have done this without you." Later, as we settled into our new home, I opened my laptop and started to write. Words flowed easily, each keystroke a step in my healing journey. Jonathan sat nearby, glancing up from his books to offer a smile of encouragement. Weeks turned into months, and our lives took on a new rhythm. I found my voice as a writer and speaker, sharing our story and helping others find their own strength. Jonathan flourished in his studies, his future bright with possibilities. One evening, after a successful speaking engagement, I sat with Jonathan on our balcony, looking out over the city. "We've come so far," I said, my voice filled with pride. "We have," he agreed, sipping his soda, "and we're just getting started." As we watched the sunset, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Mitch's downfall had been a painful journey, but it led us to a place of empowerment and freedom. We were stronger, wiser, and finally free to build the lives we deserved. "We're stronger and smarter now, and we're finally free," I said, echoing the feelings in my heart. Jonathan nodded, his eyes reflecting the same hope and determination. "Absolutely, Mom. We've got this." And with that, we stepped into our future, knowing that we had conquered our past and were ready for whatever came next.